pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For the audience, removing item S under Finance and Audit. Staff needed additional prep time, so that's off the agenda for tonight. Approval of minutes.
I move they be approved.
Let me say which ones first.
I'm approving all of them.
Oh, okay. Well, let's do September 13th first. Do we have a second for September 13th? Any commissioner comments on the
Yeah, I have.
September?
Two.
Go ahead, Kevin.
You want, okay. I'll do the easy one first. I think it's on page 12. Bottom of page 12. It says Colleen Peroni.
Yes.
I believe that's Christina. On page 7, under the 2010-40 resolution, I think the middle paragraph mischaracterizes my comments. So you can either strike it, Bob, whatever makes more sense. I just want to be clear that I feel that it's inappropriate to make the request, but if the money's there, I have no issue with using it if it exists. And I don't think it's a request that's appropriate for an institution. So I don't have a strong feeling one way or another, Bob. You can strike it or amend it, whatever works easier for you. Just make sure my comments are
Well, you have to
captured
make a
accurately.
motion. You have to decide
Then
what
I'll
you want to do.
Then I make a motion to strike what I said and just remove it from the minutes.
The only question I would have on that is if it was said in a meeting, it's recorded, you can't really change that unless it's not what you
Okay?
said. I
Then
mean, that
it's
would
not
be-
what I said.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not what he said, in my opinion. I mean, I read it, I have the second sentence, residents are doing
So-
this. I think it indicates the opposite of what Kevin said, so.
I feel it's an inappropriate request. Here, let me try to say it clearly. I feel it's an inappropriate request for us as a board to make. I don't feel and think that it's inappropriate for us to utilize those funds if they exist.
Don, you had
Yeah,
some?
on page 9, the first paragraph, it says Act 708 is a reference point, and he, being Mr. Rice, feels no need to put this into policy. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that's what Mr. Rice said. So I think he said something to the effect that it's not necessary to put the language of the act verbatim on the webpage, just the spirit of it. Does that accurately capture what you said?
Right, it's Act 3 of 2008. I mean, the discussion about 708 was the section in the act.
So it's more than just calling it Act 708, though. I think at no point are you saying we don't have to put this into policy. You're just saying that we don't have to have the language verbatim
Of the statute,
of the
verbatim.
statute. So I think that needs to be clarified.
Any further comments?
Just that on page 4 and on page 8, there's a duplicate paragraph. So on page 4, the reintroduction of ordinance 2010-23 is printed twice. And on page 8, the redesign of the website is printed twice.
Okay, on page 4, second paragraph from the bottom, I believe the name is Morabito, not Lorabito.
With those additions, I move the approval. Those changes.
Moved in second. Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I move the approval of the revised minutes for August 16, 2010.
Moved in second. And commissioner comments? Public comment? All in favor? Aye.
And I'll also
Abstain from the minutes.
Yeah, as you did before.
I'll also move that we accept the department reports at this time.
Moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Next item, notice of executive session. We had an executive session prior to this meeting. At that executive session, we discussed litigation with the business tax settlement and some personnel matters. So that was it. Next, public participation. We're trying something new tonight. We're moving public participation up because there are people that come to our meetings and don't want to sit here for 4 hours before they have a chance to bring up their point. However, we would ask people's cooperation in trying to make their comments brief and allow everyone a chance to speak. This does not change your ability to comment on any item before us that we're voting on. They'll still have public comment for those items. So, public participation. Diane.
Good evening, everyone. Diane Edbrill, 205 Spruce Tree Road. I first of all want to thank you all for putting public participation at this point in the agenda. This is really a boon to those of us with kids at home and homework getting done or not done, as the case may be. I also want to thank those of you who carefully went through the minutes and made remarks to correct them, because that's really important too, to see that everyone is, making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. I'll be as brief as I can, and I will speak as quickly as I can so as to keep things moving along. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Radnor Democratic Committee, which passed a resolution over the summer regarding a practice of the township. And I would just like to briefly or quickly read the resolution verbatim, because we think that it's a practice that's really worth noting, worth continuing, and worth expanding. Whereas Radnor Democrats have long acted as the political conscience of Radnor Township, it is our mission to hold those in power accountable for their actions and inactions, and to promote openness, civility, and fiscal discipline in all matters of township governance. Whereas the televising and webcasting of the meetings of the Board of Commissioners, advisory boards, and various committees not only support the mission and values of the Radnor Township Democratic Committee, but also serve the best interests and common good of Radnor Township. Whereas the videotaping and broadcasting of township meetings were an important resource which also helped in the investigation of past malfeasance in the township, and if continued, will assist in deterring and preventing future malfeasance. It is therefore resolved that the Radnor Township Democratic Committee supports the long-standing policy of televising and webcasting public meetings, and supports further expansion of this policy so that even more public meetings are televised in the future. And this was approved by a unanimous vote of the members present on the 18th day of August, 2010. I've made copies for all of you commissioners because we hope that you will take this and read it and take it to heart, because we are really committed to making sure that Radnor Township is run in a transparent and responsible way. Thank you very much.
Diane, was there something that prompted like meetings that aren't televised? I thought most of our, if not all of our meetings are televised. I'm just kind of curious as to what was the genesis of that.
I think that maybe sort of with new staff coming in, there was sort of a re-examination of everything and questioning whether we should be or should not be televising every single meeting. I think that there were a couple of subcommittee meetings that, people felt like, well, I don't want to be like a target for, somebody's questions about why I'm doing this, and I guess there was some question we had heard as to whether the sort of universal televising and broadcasting is a disincentive to public participation, and we felt that whatever disincentive it might be if people don't want to be on television is far outweighed by the great benefit of furthering openness and accessibility and transparency in the township government.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's sort of what I heard you say, it's an affirmation of our current practices, but it was done in anticipation of a potential change in those practices to not.
Possibly, yeah. Okay. I mean, there was something bumping around, and we also feel like not every single meeting is currently televised or recorded, and there's really no reason not to do that. I think this room is set up to videotape meetings pretty much automatically without the requirement that an operator be present, and so there's really no impediment to making every single meeting of the township accessible to the people who can't get here. Thank you. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you, Diane. Jim Dooling was telling me before the meeting started that this is the 1,500th commissioners meeting that he has done. And I know John Haynes and Chip Layfield did a ton before that. When I was chair of Parks and Rec, the first meetings ever televised were the Parks and Rec meetings. And that was after a lengthy discussion with Bob Crawford, who was not in favor of it. And I insisted that we do it because we have found such a great increase in public awareness of what's going on in Radnor Township. So it's a good thing. Sir.
Baron Gemmer, South Wayne. I have a few comments tonight related to the HARB process, and I realize there's a certificate of appropriateness on tonight. It's not specifically about that. It's more about the process in general, and kind of relates to some of the comments and discussions that have been made earlier about training for the boards in terms of knowing appropriate processes. To give a little background too, last September, there was a HARB meeting where a revised plan from an earlier month was brought forward, which in and of itself would have been substantial enough to require a certificate of appropriateness, was not on their agenda. Twice I went before them in subsequent months to urge them to kind of correct that, because now you have somebody making a change that has no documented paperwork that they can actually do what they're doing. To date, that hasn't been done. More importantly, now this current month, the HARB meetings are scheduled for the first Wednesday of the month. So a few days before September 1st in this case, I went out and checked, and the HARB meeting showed as canceled, and there was no agenda or anything out there. Middle of the month, I go out and see that actually the HARB meeting was moved to the 16th, even though the one on the 1st still says canceled. And that agenda and the subsequent video weren't put out till later. So even though now the new agenda for the 16th says rescheduled, it was canceled as of that day, so anyone that wanted to attend it would not know to attend it. So that's part of the problem, that needs to be corrected so people don't just think they're going to look to the next month. More importantly, though, perhaps in this case, similar to last September, there was one agenda item on the HARB agenda, and after that agenda item was up, and that one agenda item happens to be the one that's on your agenda for tonight, they brought up again another plan that had from July that had revised plans, reviewed those, actually voted to recommend a certificate of appropriateness, and I don't see it either on your agenda, which is appropriate because it really shouldn't be, nor on their next agenda. So I'm assuming even though they voted on it, they're going to treat it in a similar manner as they did last time. And I just don't think they view themselves in the appropriate light where these things need to be done appropriately, just like planning. I mean, if somebody tried to do something in planning without being an agenda item, everyone would be up in arms. So this is the second time it's happened, even though it's been pointed out, nothing's been corrected. So I think there's that issue, as well as if a meeting is going to be rescheduled, it needs to be specified as that and not show up 4 days before it as canceled, and then people think that it's not there.
Thank you, Baron. I think you really hit it when your first comment is the training package that we're working on to give all the boards.
What I would just which is great going forward.
And Bob will look into these other issues.
What I'd like to see too is if both the one from last year, and no penalty to the homeowners because it's not their issue, both the one from last September and this September get corrected in a manner that
it's consistent,
not just going forward with new ones.
Right. Thanks. Got to be more.
Chip Layfield, Wayne. Start with Bob Crawford had a completely different reaction to me, John, when we talked about Belmere that. He was 100% in favor of it. I'm surprised to hear, well, I'm not that surprised, but I am somewhat surprised to hear that it was his reaction to you. My comments are directed towards the Park and Rec open space improvement plan. I really can't speak to the merits of whether that plan needs to be revised or it doesn't. But I was struck watching on TV, watching the meeting the other night, that the membership is comprised largely of members of Radnor, former members of Radnor Conservancy, current members. I think 8 out of the 10 board members, presidents, executive directors. I think having a committee that heavily skewed with one perspective doesn't serve us in Radnor, and it doesn't serve you, the decision makers. I think it'd be helpful if that board had, some pushback, people that aren't all of the same mindset. I know that's not easily done, but I really think that's something that's your responsibility as commissioners to try to get, a sampling of this community. And I think, what they said there is what they said 6 years ago when they came before this board. It's the same idea, and whether it's good or not, it's up to you to decide, but thank you.
Thank you. Any further?
I'm Jim Schneller. I live in St. David's Park condominium. Thank the board for all your hard work. I'm bringing up something totally different. I heard at the recent symposium you had with a efficiency expert or some kind of administration expert who was giving a half-day program for the entire township or whoever chose. It was said that the United Way receives funds. Is that true? Does the United Way receive a contribution from Radnor Township?
Not to the best of my knowledge. Now, and the employees have not participated for a couple years, although they're talking about getting back to it, as I understand it. But that was an employee contribution program.
I see.
Bill, you want to say, because I see you nodding your head over there.
Yeah, I believe in the past the township has made contributions to the United Way.
Okay. But we haven't now for at least 2 years that I'm aware of.
I'd have to look to be 100% sure when the
No,
last one
they
was.
came in and met with us. That's why I'm
Okay.
fairly confident of that.
Also, I wanted to object. I happen to know that the plan for the new condominiums at the corner of Luella Avenue and School Lane, they expressly stated that there would be a sidewalk put in across the street along the school property. And that was obviously agreed to and enforced, at least as far as all the hearings and the land use negotiations. And what's happened is they've planted ground cover and now they've put in a number of trees. So School Lane, essentially, if you want to walk, you're at the mercy of traffic. And I can't believe that they haven't been made to adhere to at least that simple aspect. And I was hoping that you might instruct engineering to have a look at that.
I don't think that's correct, but we'll
Yeah.
look into it.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't think
glad
it's
to.
correct, but it's in my ward. I'll find out for sure, and if it is correct, then we will find out why we'll rectify the situation. But I'll take that for action and talk to the manager and the engineer and find out if you're accurate, and we'll go from there.
Thanks. I think I speak for much of people who frequent downtown, and everyone sooner or later ends up walking or jogging down School Lane. It is a benefit, and it's tough to get along the athletic field. It can be soggy. It's kind of serpentine if you're in a hurry, and it's part of Wayne. I think we should have foot traffic access to it. Thank you.
Thanks. Anything further? Committee reports, public safety.
The first item on the agenda is a discussion of the Bryn Mawr Fire Company station repairs. I'm going to let John take the lead on this since he raised the issue a couple of weeks ago.
Thanks, Hank. We have a number of representatives here from Lower Merion Township and also Bryn Mawr Fire Company. I'd like them to come up and speak, and kind of we'll start with Charlie Dolan. He'll come up and give us the background on this issue. This all concerns Bryn Mawr Firehouse's floor and the structural issues that they're having there, and the project that they need to do to make that building safe.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Again, I'm Charlie Dolan, President of Bryn Mawr Fire Company, and I'd like to thank the commissioners for the opportunity to come before you again to discuss this issue. The last commissioners meeting we were here was August 16th, where we presented this issue to the Board of Commissioners regarding our engine room floor. In attendance with me this evening from Bryn Mawr Fire Company, we have Bryn Mawr Fire Company Chief Dan Kincaid and our Budget Director, Rich Cuff. From Lower Merion Township, we have Chief Fire Officer Chaz McGarvey, Lower Merion Township Manager Doug Cleland, and Lower Merion Township Engineer Ed Pluchenik. Forgive me through this presentation if I'm a bit repetitive from what we discussed in August, but I feel like if I give the lineage of events as to what was discussed then, it'll help us give a little better idea of what's going on today.
Charlie, I might want to add that we had a meeting at the Bryn Mawr Firehouse, myself, John Fisher, Bob, who else was there? I forget.
We had, from Radnor Township, we had
Bill Martin.
Bill Martin, Bill White.
Bill
and-
White, yeah.
Right, and Bob Zinkowski.
Right.
In Lower Township, we had Commissioner Scott Zeloff, Doug Cleveland, Township Manager, Township Engineer, Ed Pluchenik, myself, Chief Kincaid, and other members of our board. Rich Cuff also was there.
Right. Dan was there too, I think.
Dan Cuff,
Yeah.
correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just would like to quickly revisit some of the items that we discussed back in August. Bryn Mawr Fire Company covers approximately 25% of Radnor Township. Our coverage area is from County Line Road and Landover Road, Bryn Mawr Avenue, that area there, out Bryn Mawr Avenue to Sproul Road 320, around 320 to County Line Road, down County Line Road to Matsonford Road. That's our district. And I believe that portions of the 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 7th wards are in our coverage area. I'm pretty certain that's what it is. Some of the institutions that we...
Can I ask you a question, Charlie? 'Cause I
Yes,
thought
sir.
you were going to...
Sure.
You cover 25% of the land.
Correct, the
What
geography.
what percent of your calls are made in Radnor Township?
I'll have all of that information
Okay,
here, and
that's
I'll
fine.
get to it if there's any questions after
Thank you.
that. We can go over them. Sure, thanks. We cover the entire Villanova University campus, Radnor House condominiums, Rosemont Plaza, St. Edmund's Home, Agnes Irwin School, Radwin Apartments, the Old American College campus or the Barak Hebrew Academy, Rosemont Presbyterian Village, and the Radnor Valley Country Club. As you can see, each of these campuses, apartments, and institutions present significant challenges for the fire company. In addition, we have 2,946 residential addresses, 1,431 apartment addresses, and 183 business addresses. This is in Radnor Township only, not in Lower Township. And the reason why we are so sharp on these numbers is because that's how we address our fund drive effort. And in our fund drive, of those 2,946 residential addresses, 25% contribute to us. In the apartments of 1,431 apartments, 5% contribute. And in the businesses, 16% of the 183 businesses listed contribute to us. Bryn Mawr Fire Company has 46 active volunteer firefighters, along with approximately 15 additional volunteers that handle administrative duties. Many of the volunteer firefighters also wear a second hat as an administrator. Among our 60 or so volunteers, many live and work in Radnor Township, myself included. Our building may be in Lower Township, however, our volunteers spend considerable time in Radnor Township. I might add that when Bryn Mawr Fire Company is dispatched to a fire call or a fire-related call, our company does not stop and think Radnor or Lower Merion. Our fire district is our fire district. Several examples of the extra time that our volunteers contribute are the 4th of July Garrett Hill Parade. We spend time with the community, soliciting money to help pay for that. St. Edmund's Home, many of our volunteers go out to a Christmas party there, dress up as Santa Claus, and we also contribute to their funds over there to help, make sure that all the challenged children over there have a nice Christmas. And during the fall, this time of year, fire prevention, our full-time career engineers and also our volunteers go out into the schools, into the preschools, and we teach fire prevention. I mean, that's a good outreach to the community, and again, we do that all as part of our volunteer service. These are all services that we provide the to the community. We take them very seriously and we're very committed to them. In 2009, Bryn Mawr Fire Company responded to 577 fire or fire-related calls, 199 of which were in Radnor Township, 373 in Lower Township, which is basically 35% of our calls for 2009 were in Radnor Township. In 2010 to date, we've gone on 406 fire or fire-related calls, 166 of which are in Radnor Township, the balance being in Lower Township, which is 40%. And that seems to be the play that gets it somewhere between 35 and 45%. Each year is a little bit differently. It's just up or down, whichever that is. To address our budget, Bryn Mawr Fire Company's operating budget runs plus or minus each year $550,000. Contributions from Lower Merion Township are about $275,000, and Radnor Township's contribution is $44,000. Of course, there's usually a percentage increase each year with that. Our fund drive varies each year. After 9/11, our fund drive spiked to probably $170,000. Since then, it has fallen back to pre-9/11 levels, which is $130,000 in that vicinity. This is really doing well compared to other fire companies, and we thank our community for that and for that help. Approximately 45% of our operating budget is for personnel costs, just like any other business, salaries, health care, everything else, and that's one of the things that's an issue right now, which we all know about, is health care. Capital budget items are covered under a different plan. Our fire apparatus is planned over a 20-year period, with apparatus being replaced in an 8-year cycle. This helps us to plan and implement a financial strategy that allows us to always maintain a modern fleet. Building needs, however, are quite different. Our building is 107 years old. In the last 20 years, we have recreated our building, trying to use a strategy that allows us the ability to pay for these projects as we go. Lower Merion Township has done a great job of helping us in a very large way to get these projects completed. Radnor Township has also helped us out in working with us on these projects. After 20 years of continual projects, we felt that we had reached a point where we could relax on capital spending and just have operating maintenance on our building. Most of the building had been completed. New roof was put on the building last fall. In 2008, we had completely renovated our second floor with a new state-of-the-art training room and offices for the chief and other fire officers to better coordinate their work and effort to help serve the volunteer service. As previously noted in our last meeting, and since then, Bryn Mawr Fire Company has found themselves in a very difficult position. In the spring of 2009, Bryn Mawr Fire Company ordered a new 100-foot aerial ladder truck. At that time, we began assessing our building in regard to the weight of fire apparatus and how future fire apparatus would fit into our building. Through this study done by Lower Merion Township engineers, it has been determined that our engine room floor is in code violation. There is no allowance for additional weight, and the situation needs to be addressed. After much detail and study, it has been determined that our engine room floor is in need of reinforcement. The original engineering analysis projected $275,000 to cover the cost of this project. In April 2010, this year, the project was put out to bid to 7 companies. 2 companies responded. The low bid was $420,000. The second bid was $615,000. Now those bids would also, you would have to add somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 engineering costs, for the original plans and then the follow through in the actual build of the project. So you're looking on the low bid would be somewhere around $490,000, $480,000, $490,000 in that range there. And I believe that through the course of the meetings that we have had, that the Radnor engineer Malloy has been in contact with Lower Merion's engineer Ed Pluchenik. I think that may have already happened, so that we would love to have that second set of eyes on everything that we're doing, especially from Radnor Township. So there's no need to explain the anxiety that Bryn Mawr Fire Company, being an all-volunteer fire company, this project reaches well beyond our financial ability. That brings us to the present day. Since we last met in August, a lot of things have been done, a lot of ground has been covered. One thing that did not happen was the price of the project did not go down. It's still the same. And the urgency of it a little bit is the fact that I believe the expiration date on the extension of the bid is September 29th, which is the Thursday of this week. We've made as many political connections as we possibly can. We met several times with Representative Tim Briggs. I met with Greg Vitale, met with Dalen Leach's office, and they're all very supportive to all of our project, but I don't sense that there's any urgency in what's going to happen with them, and I don't see anything there but applying for grants and things that would normally be done, but in the short term, I don't see anything happening there. I know that Commissioner Nagel has had conversations also, and he could probably comment on that. Commissioner Nagel and myself have also recorded a 30-minute interview on Radnor TV 21, which helps get the word of what our need is out to the full community. Also, Lower Merion Township Manager Doug Cleland and Radnor Township Manager Bob Zinkowski have also met and discussed this fully. As Commissioner Nagel just mentioned, we had a cooperative combined meeting with Lower Merion Township and Radnor Township just so that everybody understood and knew exactly what was going on and exactly where the project was and what the urgency of the project was. So having said that, that brings us to this evening. And again, I was here and made a request, and continuing on and following all of the things that we could possibly do, I'll just leave the floor open to any questions or comments that any of the commissioners may have. And as I said, we have the Lower Merion Township engineer here with us, who was the company that designed and had the reasoning for it, and then our township manager, Doug Cleland, Lower Merion Township, if anyone has any questions for any of us.
Charlie, I just want to comment briefly. It was through that meeting that we had I guess it was last week.
Tuesday.
That we realized that the entire board would benefit from the same communication, and I had asked this group to come in and speak with us so we would all be on the same page, rather than just John and I knowing what's going on.
Right.
So I want to thank all of you for coming in. I think what would be helpful, I'll let Hank ask some questions, but I think it would be helpful to understand the engineering part of it, just on an overview, and
Okay.
what it means to be out of compliance, not to be within the code for that building, and what the safety concerns are, and the urgency of getting that done. So.
I'm not being the engineer. I'm not even going to
No,
take a
but
stab
I
at
see
that.
your
That's why
engineer coming
Mr.
up.
Pluchenik is here with us.
Good evening. My name's Ed Pluchenik, Pluciennik. I'm with Pannoni Associates, and I'm the Lower Merion Township engineer. Our firm was asked to take a look at the ladder bay floor initially, since there was a new ladder truck being ordered, and there was a concern whether or not that truck would be able to be withstood, the load of it would be able to be withstood by the floor there in the fire station. As Charlie said, the fire station was built over 100 years ago. Back in the early 1960s, the wooden floor was replaced with a reinforced concrete floor. That floor was then reinforced in the mid to early 90s for the ladder truck that's in there right now. That analysis, we were able to get a copy of that, and we reviewed it. We looked at the ladder truck that's in there today that has been delivered, and the loads are very similar in nature. However, the code required factors of safety were not achieved by the floor, that is, with that load applied to it. And if I could explain just for a minute, there are codes that engineers design by. Those codes have certain factors of safety or reserve loading capacity within the design that allows the structure to withstand a little bit heavier load than what the design load is. And that's for inconsistencies in construction, maybe material deficiencies, minor deficiencies, and occasional overloads of the structure. And they, again, are code required. When you design a structure, you have to design to those codes. As we had reviewed the ladder bay, we found that those loads were in excess of those required factors of safety. And we brought that forward to the Chief Fire Officer, Chaz McGarvey, and to the manager's office in discussing what the options were here. We were then asked to take a look at the other bays within the fire station, because there are pieces of equipment in there also. And we found that those were also overloaded. The loads of the existing trucks, or apparatus in the other bays, other than the ladder bay, are a little bit lighter, so the severity of the overload was not quite the same, but still they were in excess of what the code required. So we were asked to take a look at that and see what, first we did an analysis of the ladder bay, see what kind of reinforcement we would have to install in order to satisfy those code requirements. And then we also looked at the remainder of the floor where the other pieces of apparatus were to see what was required there. And as a result of that analysis, we put together a bid packet And that bid packet was the bid packet that was just advertised and we received bids on. Is that sufficient?
If I understand you, the current use right now with the current trucks that you have are not conforming. Is that
That's correct.
okay? And how long has that been the situation?
It's probably been that way since the early 90s, 1990s.
So what is triggering this need to address it now?
Well, there is a requirement by code to have a certain built-in factor of safety in the strength of the element, the structural element you have. We didn't do the calculations in the 90s. I'm not really sure why it was designed the way it was, but today, when we were charged to look at it, we identified that these deficiencies were there as it relates to the code that's in place today.
The answer is that you're getting a new truck that really triggered it because that's way overload. So that definitely has to be done, and the other ones now have a problem too.
Well, the new truck is slightly heavier, but not so much heavier that really would have acquired that.
But if I may,
yes.
Elaine, the way the codes work is if you don't know you have a problem, you can just go mightily along. When you discover you have a problem, you then are required to address the problem as soon as possible.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but another thing that you had noticed in the fire department floor was the surface had failed, and the original thought was it was failing because of other issues, but now the thinking was that maybe the failure was possibly a result of the structural issues in the floor.
Right. Last year, we replaced the surface of the equipment bays. That's the non-ladder bays. And what was happening is moisture was getting down into where the reinforcing steel is near the top of the slab, and was causing corrosion, and that corrosion was causing the floor to spall or crack, and pieces come up. So we removed that and cleaned the bars, retreated them, and then recoated them, and then put a new surface on and then sealed it. But that was before we did this analysis, and now as we reviewed the capacity of the floor, what we believe was happening is there was some deterioration of the floor due to the overloading of the floor on the surface, causing small cracks in the floor, which allowed then the water to get down in there, either from the trucks as they're washed or coming in with snow or water from rain.
Ed, what particular code are we talking about?
Well, we designed to the American Concrete Institute Code, and also would be the International Building Code.
And is it the fact that the code has been changed which has caused the situation at Bryn Mawr to become out of code, or is it some other factor?
No, we don't believe it's been changed. There's been no substantial change that I've been made aware of by our structural people.
So aside from the spalling that you described, the building itself has been safe?
Safe is sort of relative. I mean,
sure
the trucks
it is, yeah.
are in there. There's no indication that it's in danger of imminent collapse, but that doesn't say that there isn't a need to act and a reason to be concerned. The codes are prepared by engineers that are in research, scientist type and statisticians. They look at them and they evaluate, looking at real life experiences out there, and do this analysis and prepare codes that are the guidelines for our practicing engineers. And as practicing engineers, when we see something that's out of compliance, then there's cause for concern.
I'm not suggesting you do this, but if you do nothing, what is the concern? That there will be a collapse?
If you do nothing, there could be a situation where deterioration of the structure over time could cause it to collapse, not necessarily catastrophically in the sense where the truck just falls through the floor, but there would be warning signs, spalling of the concrete, major spalling, settling, things like that.
Now, the building itself, what sits underneath the various bays?
Underneath the equipment bay, towards the ladder bay, there is a kitchen, and there is a mechanical room. Then in the remainder of the area, there's a meeting room for for the fire station personnel.
So a kitchen, a mechanical room, and a reading room?
Meeting room,
Meeting room, okay.
or a hall, I guess you could say.
And what's the depth below ground level of those rooms?
I would say probably 10 feet.
And what's the fix that the bids were looking for?
Well, what we were looking at, the way the structure is constructed, you have a front foundation wall, then a third of the way back you have a reinforced concrete beam that runs parallel to the front face of the building, and then another third of the way back you have another beam like that, and then the rear foundation wall. Spanning from the front foundation wall to the first beam, then to the second to third beam, is a structural slab. And what we were intending to do, there are two issues. One is with the slab and the bending of the slab, the flexure of it was called, and it's overstretched. So our solution there, we felt the simplest thing would be to add another beam parallel to the front face of the wall in the middle of each of the three spans. And then those beams would be supported by perpendicular beams that would tie into the existing columns. The existing columns have the capacity to carry the load. There is, in addition, with the ladder bay loading, there is a problem with the existing beams in shear, which is usually the greatest when you reach the connection with the column. And by installing a collar, which would support the beams, these perpendicular beams, it would also be able to support part of that column, the existing column, and alleviate that issue as well. So that basically we're going to add three beams that would run the width of the building, one in each of the three bays, and then connect them with perpendicular beams to the existing columns.
Are there any alternative engineering solutions other than what you've described?
We've looked at a number of them. We looked at adding columns instead of the transverse beams that would connect to the existing columns, but what would happen is we would have spacing between columns on the order of 6 feet. So it really inhibits the use of that space down in the basement. We had looked at other framing schemes, but they ended up being more invasive in the construction or more costly. And we also looked at taking that space and removing the space and building foundation walls inside the space and then backfilling it with stone and grout and a number of other similar situations where we would either take all of the space out until the fire station would lose the use of that, or limiting it to, say, the mechanical room and some other storage space in there, but still filling in most of it.
When I was listening to Charlie's presentation, the thought struck me that if you didn't have anything significant underneath the bays, maybe one of the things you do is simply fill it in with concrete or something of that nature and do away with all these engineering schemes that you're talking about. But obviously, mechanical room, you need that to run the building.
Right.
Kitchen, you need to feed the personnel. And a meeting room you certainly need, unless you can outsource those things to some other location in the building. Was that looked at all?
There's the building, I don't know, Charlie, if you want to answer that.
If I could just add to Ed's comments, unfortunately, the meeting room that he's discussing is the center point of all of our social functions in the firehouse. I mean, it's where we have all of our meetings and then all of our Christmas party, all the parties that all the members have. And it's just, plus it's a museum, it's our museum to our fire company down there. And we made all these decisions to renovate the rest of the building, the second floor, with everything that we did, we just completed because we had this room down there. So it's kind of like we're caught in the middle here. So having looked at all the different options, the options are there, but it would put us out of business.
No, I'm just exploring it because somebody out there is going to be watching this and say, okay, this is now the ask, as they say.
Correct.
And people are going to say, well, is it absolutely necessary? It sounds like it is. Are there alternatives? Doesn't sound like there are any.
Well, one thing which we have done is that we've been working on this for about 1.5 years or longer. And we've explored about every avenue that we possibly can to do it. And there's always going to be someone else that could maybe come up with a different idea, but we think we've looked at every one of those options.
Right.
And that's why I was saying, when I said earlier in my comments, that Radnor engineer Malloy, if there was someone, because of our request from Radnor Township, if that engineer was to take a look at what Ed and his company have done, it just supports what we've looked at.
I appreciate your answering my questions. Thank you.
Do the institutions, the educational institutions like Agnes Irwin Villanova, the not-for-profits, do they make contributions to you, or are they basically free riders?
No, they make contributions. The exact amounts I'm not aware of, but again, I'm trying not to interfere until we realized what the scope of this financial burden was. I'm trying not to interfere with our operational fund drive. Our fund drive that goes out of here, that's our operational money, and this will be a capital request, and we could go out and start soliciting. But we just haven't had a lot of success in large dollar amounts. I have spoken with several foundations to try, but it's just such a slow process of getting money, especially in today's economy and what's going on in the financial world today. It's not quick, but again, we're continuing to work on this avenue and trying everything we can.
Is the urgency driven by the fact that the new truck is coming in, by the contract which you just
Now, the new truck is
got
in.
bids in on, or some other factor?
Now, the new truck is in, and as Ed had said, there's very little difference between, I think it's 2,000 pounds is the difference between the old truck and the new truck. What we were looking at was the question hadn't been asked in a long time. It's a 100-year-old building, and I believe I even asked the question of our board and of our House committee a year and a half ago. Let's look at this. Let's find out if we do have a problem, and if we do have a problem, let's see what we have to do to fix it, because we're trying to look at a long-term capital plan to see what we have to do. We did not expect to get the answer that we got when we got the engineer's report.
Can you also
I was going to say, why don't we have Doug speak to Kevin's question about the urgency?
I was going to posit that a different way. As far as I'm concerned, as soon as we're on notice as a public entity of a structure not being in compliance, I would assume we have to act. It's not if it happens, it's when it happens, and if something goes wrong, we're liable for that. So we can debate whether or not we should do it today or next week or next month, but the point is we know that the safety concern exists, and we probably need to act on that information.
Right. I think that was the point. I had this conversation with Ed Pluchenik several weeks ago, and once we're aware of the situation has to be addressed. And that's what we're...
Was the design from 1990 was faulty? Is that correct?
I wouldn't say it was faulty, but the design went, and the truck is there. It hasn't fallen through the floor. But we did not just look at that design. We did an analysis fresh with the tools that we have today, and came up with this situation. And when we went back through, we don't have complete calculations and everything of what we saw. It looks like there were a couple issues that are apparent now that might not have been back then.
So a question for the fire department. Was there any consideration to the liability coverage of the company that did the design in 1990? If they designed something for you that is, you're determining now is insufficient, then they would have some liability.
I don't think that's really an issue, because the statute of repose in Pennsylvania is 12 years, and anybody who participates in the construction or design of a building which is attached to the ground has no liability after a period of 12 years runs. So I don't think it's really something which they could.
Okay, I mean,
That's
that's
exactly
different
what I
than
was
my
gonna say.
understanding of liability, but my understanding of that the trigger was upon the, tell me if I'm incorrect, but the trigger was on the indication of the fault, not on the actual design.
The statute of repose runs from the time that the work is completed. And if that work was completed back in 1993, the statute of repose would have expired in 2005. Am I correct on that, John?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next question then, what's the difference in cost between the design that would inhibit the use and the estimate the current design that you think is likely.
Considerable.
Could you explain that again?
What's the difference in cost between the design that would inhibit the use? As I understood it, there's a potential to support the fleet of trucks, but you would adversely affect the use of the space below the truck floor.
Now, the numbers that were received, we had done a comparative analysis, and the bids actually came in higher. The reason we believe that is because of the complexity of the work. We had assumed it would be relatively easy. The contractors, we actually talked to the two contractors who did submit bids, one who did not submit bid, and they were concerned about the difficulty and the fact that you couldn't get equipment down there, be mostly handwork, with jacks and alike to get the steel in place. But basically, we looked at it if we had reinforced the equipment bays for the same type of loadings that they have right now, or for a heavier loading, so to be consistent with the ladder bay. And the difference is with those combined, the savings would be in the range of about $20,000 to $30,000, because most of the work is in the labor, not in the materials. So if you're going to be putting beams in, if the beams are a little heavier, it wouldn't really save you that much, because you still have to get the access in there. You have to do the demolition or the removal of the existing finishes, and then install the reinforcing, and then go back and put those finishes back in. And then utilities, there is a sprinkler system that has to be removed. So in the numbers that we had, so if you look at, if that was reflected mostly in material costs.
Do you have it jacked up temporarily with temporary supports or
No,
columns?
because we haven't, in the ladder bay, there actually is reinforcing, as I said, it was in there before, from 1993. And we've gone in and looked at that, and there's no cracking now that the new truck's in there, nothing that we saw, and that's been looked at. If there was signs of that, then we would have them pull the truck out, and then we would have to do some kind of temporary repair. But we haven't seen that, or strengthening.
Your choice of wording earlier on the code, I maybe didn't fully grasp it. Is this the code that we're violating, or that you're not, maybe that's not the best way to describe it, the code that you're not in compliance with, is that a law, or is that a recommendation from a professional society? Because you didn't say.
Well, you have the codes that all the municipalities run by in Pennsylvania now, the International Building Code, that's law. And then they refer back to codes that are put together by professional institutions, like, for instance, the American Concrete Institute, that's a nonprofit organization that puts together codes, just like the fire codes.
Basically, the law of the geography which you're in says you're supposed to comply with these codes proposed by these professional organizations.
I think Lower Merion has adopted the International Building Code, whichever particular edition it is, just as we do
Right.
periodically here.
Doug, do you want to speak a little bit to the urgency?
Yes, thank you. My name is Doug Cleland. I'm the Lower Merion Township Manager, and thank you for having us tonight. I think before I answer that question directly, I think this is one of the topics that if we knew what we knew today in the past, we probably would have gone about this whole process differently. And this has sort of evolved. You've heard a number of the statements tonight of how this topic has kind of had a life of its own and evolved over really 20 years. And you couple that with the fact that arguably Lower Merion Township and Radnor Township haven't had as strong a relationship on a topic like this, where a topic like this comes up, and we really haven't dealt with these kinds of matters as abutting municipalities. Fortunately, we have a very good example recently in the 5 Points intersection where we have worked together, and it's a successful project that is nearing completion. But we don't have very many examples of intermunicipal agreements, and I'll take responsibility as the manager, and I know that I'm wishing that we would have had discussions about how does the Bryn Mawr Fire Company get funded over time. And fortunately, the Bryn Mawr Fire Company, I think one of the top fire companies in our region certainly has played that role. They have worked with you as a board, and they have worked with us as a board, and they have received money from Radnor Township over time for both operating and capital, and certainly from Lower Merion Township. And so we've kind of been on the sidelines a bit and allowed them to operate, and they have here too. And certainly this topic evolved from thinking that only a ladder bay was going to need to be reinforced. And in fact, in our capital budget last year, we budgeted $90,000, $80,000 for the repair, and $10,000 more. And then as we got into the weights of these trucks, and as you know, fire trucks are heavier and heavier now with all the equipment, the water, and all the desire to carry safely firefighters. And so it evolved to needing to check out the other bays. We felt it was our fiduciary responsibility to evaluate the other bays, and they carry very heavy, tens of thousands of pounds of truck on each. And so that's how it evolved into what then was a $275,000 budget after we only budgeted $90,000 last year. Well, we put the thing out for bid with all the bays, and arguably we could have contacted you at that time. This would have been like in the spring and notified you this is what we were doing. We were thinking that certainly the number had grown, but certainly not to the numbers that we're talking about today. The bids were opened, and we were certainly, shocked by the bids, and we checked with the vendors, and they certainly expressed why the bids were what they were, and certainly getting only 2 bids, and the second low bid being, so much higher than the first low bid certainly made us quite nervous. And it was the bidders explained, and then others that didn't bid. That's a very complicated project and very expensive to try to get in there and do the work. The bids, we have a standard process of formal bids that are good for 60 days, and that period of time was expiring at the end of July. We reported out in July that this was happening and that we were very concerned when we got the bids. And again, from May to July, perhaps we should have had a greater degree of dialogue. But we, at that time, the fire company did approach the Radnor Township to ask if there was an ability for Radnor to participate in this expense. And we delayed the award of the contract. The vendor agreed to 2 30-day extensions, which, as noted, expires at the end of this week. We have not had conversation with them to see if they would agree to an additional 30-day extension. And I have not had that conversation. I don't know that such an extension would be granted. And I certainly, as we all would, want to be forthright to any vendor, especially one that is hung around beyond the normal period, to receive an award. So we are poised. We've been poised really since the end of July to try to have conversation with Radnor Township and the fire company, look for other funding, and come forward last Wednesday with hopefully a sort of partnership of payment for this unfortunate repair requirement. And then when we met with President Nagel and Commissioner Fisher and our Ward Commissioner Scott Zeloff, who was unable to be here tonight because he had other meetings at Lower Merion Township tonight, but I have come, felt that that we wanted to hear from Radnor Township, and so we postponed until a special meeting that our board is having Wednesday night to consider this award. And then I realize that you haven't had a lot of time on a topic like this, and it is a surprise, and it is an unbudgeted expense, and do certainly apologize for that. But it's an unbudgeted expense for us too, and we therefore want to create a funding partnership for this project and to move forward, work with this vendor, which we think is a good vendor, and we think this is the price to do this project right. We even had some discussions in August with the fire company about whether it would make any sense to begin to talk about building a new fire station. And the fire company loves their fire station. It's one of the oldest in the area, and they've maintained it well. As Charlie Dolan said, they've made major investments. Lower Merion's made major investments. Radnor has also in the station, and they don't want to move. And we don't have any place to move them even if we did. So a bit of a long-winded answer, and I apologize, but did want to give you a little bit of flavor there. And I think from just the last thing I would note is that if Radnor Township is unable to participate in helping be a funding partner here, I would ask you to think about what do you think we should do as Lower Merion Township, realizing we are the fire company's domiciled in Lower Merion for sure, and very important to us in our fire service. But it's also important to Radnor Township, and you've recognized that over the years by providing funding, as we have, to one of the important volunteer institutions in our community. So, do you have any questions that I could respond to?
One question, Doug. I know that the Bryn Mawr Fire Company is close to Radnor Township, obviously. Are there any other municipalities that it services, such as Haverford?
No. And my understanding is that they did service Haverford Township quite a while ago. And for whatever reason, perhaps personalities, perhaps just the reasons of Haverford Township, they requested that the Bryn Mawr Fire Company and other abutting fire companies along the Haverford border not come in to Haverford Township. We would certainly, Bryn Mawr Fire Company would, if called specifically by a resident of Haverford Township, would respond, but we have been asked not to respond. We're certainly available for mutual aid and, of course, provide mutual aid to Radnor as Radnor would to us in a similar situation.
Who actually let the bids out? Was it
Lower Merion Township.
Okay, and who was the winning bidder?
Sean Nick, Inc., which is the contractor. We checked them out. We think that they're just fine to accomplish this project.
And their bid was $420,000.
$420,195, and we think there's approximately $70,000 in other costs. Excuse me, $50,000 in other costs.
Yeah, I heard
the
50
design and then the construction inspection and construction engineering work during construction for a project of this complexity. So it's a $470,000 estimated project total.
Yeah, I had heard $50,000 to $75,000.
Yeah, I think it's 50 is what we're going with at this point.
And who would provide those services?
Some of them have already been provided by the township engineer, and they would provide additional service. So a big chunk of that additional $50,000 has been expended through a lot of this research, evaluation, analysis of alternatives, as well as will be under the construction inspection period.
But that $50,000, if I heard you accurately, was an allocation of the township engineer's time and effort, not out of pocket?
Well, the township engineer is a contract employee that's paid by the hour by Lower Merion Township, different than Radnor, so that's a hard dollar expense.
Gotcha. And if you commit to this project, when does the work actually start?
I would say that if we commit, it would be about a month for the contract authorization phase, the signing of the contracts, and the work to be done. But then there would be the ordering of steel and other materials, so it could be another month after that. So it would be this fall that the work would commence, and it would be done. It's mostly indoors. They have to get a lot of steel indoors, which is difficult to do with the very tight quarters of their basement, which is one of the reasons why this is such a costly repair. It's so labor intensive.
Bob or Bill, if we were to agree to support this and the work didn't start till January, does that give us any budget relief, or are you locked in once you commit?
You're asking me on that? Well, maybe I'll give you a long answer here.
Okay.
I know when...
Bob, before you start,
Sure.
Doug, you really didn't answer the question I asked, which was why is it so important that we get it done now, that you
Because
get an
2
answer?
days from now, we have next to the last day of the month and the expiration of the bids, and the vendor has not been asked to extend again another 30-day period. They may or may
And
not
you're-
if we would ask. If they didn't ask, then the bids would have to be rejected,
Right.
and we would have to rebid, and we are nervous about rebidding this because we don't know that we would do any better if we would rebid. In fact, we might do worse. The price of steel has gone up in that time period, and we saw that there was only one other bidder that was so much higher. So we are concerned on a rebid situation for this, and we evaluated that certainly. So again, we don't know whether this vendor would honor an extension for additional funding to be found.
I appreciate all the time and effort that's been put into this, and I know over the last week, been wrestling with this particular issue. But just as a little bit of a background on this, looking at the financial contributions we made to the Bryn Mawr Fire Company, in the way of annual contributions since 1999 totals a little over $467,000. Capital contributions has been a little over $432,000, totaling for that period over $900,000. when I look at the request, I know Charlie had come and spoken to me back in the summertime, and I know he had asked what the contributions could be from the township this year, and I told him nothing, as well as next year, nothing. I know then it proceeded to the next level with the Board of Commissioners. Correct, for the floor. And I guess the real issue that I have is knowing that we have significant challenges, not only in that capital equipment fund, but also the millions of dollars of repairs that we know that are underground that we are going to have to address, the infrastructure that we have in this township. I can understand the equipment because it does come into service the residents of Radnor Township, the engines and that. But I guess when I look at a floor repair, that's in Lower Marion Township. It doesn't move in and out of the township into Radnor Township. I'm sure that when this piece of equipment was bought, the floor, as was aware, was, an issue before you'd buy something. No offense to anyone, but I'm sure that if I came back to the Board of Commissioners after we spent approximately $1 million for a piece of equipment and we couldn't house it, I would believe the 7 of you would have a significant issue and concern with that. Knowing the challenges of our budget, knowing of one that, I'm pretty particular that Radnor Township tax dollars should be spent and kept in Radnor Township and take care of the issues that face Radnor Township first. I have a difficult time providing any money for this type of repair towards this floor. Bill, I'm not sure if there's anything you need to add from your end.
Sure. Couple observations. First, Mr. Higgins, to answer your question, I would recommend if the Board of Commissioners elect to proceed, even though we wouldn't actually expend any money till next year, given the fact that the money would, in essence, be obligated or committed to, that we go ahead and set those funds aside immediately to make sure they're not spent on something else that may come up either now or during the budget process for the capital funding for next year. Additionally, and it's just kind of more editorializing from my perspective, but I chuckle a little bit from the standpoint that from an engineering perspective, when a deficiency is found, there is then a requirement to fix it immediately. But the same regard is not given to financial matters. And in this case, as a matter of fact, we'd actually be putting ourselves a little bit further behind by the tune of whatever it is if the commissioners decide to proceed with this. So it's something else maybe to keep in mind, and then perhaps if there's a way to, if the commissioners do decide to proceed with funding this, maybe look at something else that's currently budgeted that could be offset, something that so that the impact to the capital fund this year remains unchanged, knowing that the capital fund this year is already in the red. We don't put it further behind. So, as the discussion and the considerations move forward, something else to keep in mind. So,
Could you?
What is the amount of the contribution you want from Radnor? What's the total?
The original quest was for $200,000.
Of a $470,000.
Your choice of, I'm sorry,
Lower,
go ahead.
and Lower Marine is paying the other 270.
We're still trying to figure that out, but they're yes to 200,000 for Lower Marine, 200,000 for Radnor, and the $70,000 we're still trying to work out with Bryn Mawr Fire Company and how that might work, may not work.
And the 200,000 from Lower Marine includes the 50,000 you already spent, so that's 150. What are you looking at? Yeah.
Yes.
Could you play out for us the scenario if we can't come up with the money and Lower Marion can't come up with the money? What would happen logistically? Practically speaking, what would happen?
Probably the Bryn Mawr Fire Company would have to borrow the money.
And do you have the capacity to do that, or?
Well, it would take some challenging times to figure that out, but if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. But at the same time, what the municipalities and the townships have to respect is the fact that we have 60 people down there working for free to provide a very valuable service to both Lower Marion Township and Radnor Township, and that is not to be discounted. I mean, Bryn Mawr Fire Company will be in business regardless of what we have to do. One of the things that we try not to worry about, but always worry about, is money, because, you know, it's an important part of everything that is done in any business or any municipality. But
You know, I've got an issue, though, because, see, here comes the argument that we take is about the volunteers. This is not about the volunteers, this argument, because I think there's a great respect on behalf of the township for the volunteers of a tremendous job that they do, not only for Lower Merion Township, but Radnor Township. But the issue, I think, when we start crossing these and blurring the lines between public safety and the issue of a floor, I take exception to that, because I think we're starting to blur the line, and it becomes very fuzzy between now it's public safety that we're concerned with instead of the issue of a floor that's had an issue for a long time, and at the 11th hour, now it's an issue here that puts Radnor Township and these commissioners behind the 8 ball is to make a decision.
Well, I mean, that's probably something that we could debate all evening about the volunteer service.
Well, I don't think
and the
I don't
floor.
think it's much of an issue to debate. The issue is the floor. So the issue is not on regards to the volunteers or the service that's provided. The issue is solely on the floor. If that's my understanding, it's the floor that
Well,
we're talking
I mean,
about.
I disagree with that. The floor is the building, is the equipment, is the thing, it's all together. So that might be your opinion, Bob, but I disagree with that. Has Lower Merion already committed to 200,000? You budgeted 90, you spent 50. What's your commitment?
The commitment has not been made.
Yeah.
The matter has been introduced to the board. The board asked that we would look to Radnor to be a funding partner. I believe that in the absence of Radnor being a funding partner, that Lower Merion Township would be very reluctant to award this bid this week. And we don't know, again, we may ask the vendor to have an extension, which would give us a little bit more time. I would like to make one other comment, though. And Bob, you said that, that.
Well, you don't have to have it.
Order
You don't
a
have to have
truck,
it.
and then, a number of months later, you come back and realize that you needed floor repair. Again, this repair has been needed for a long time. This truck is only a little bit heavier than the previous trucks that were on there, so it's been out of compliance for a long time. And yes, it did get to this point, and we do apologize for the lateness of the question, but still the issue is at hand as to whether this should be done now or not. We've got the same, funding, challenge that others do. We have budget problems as others do also, of course.
Can I ask, I asked Hank this, and I think I'm beginning to learn this process a little bit better. This is identified on the agenda as a discussion,
Yeah.
right? So can we actually even make a commitment tonight?
We can give a sense of the board.
But we can't make a commitment.
No, but if we give a sense of the
I
board, we would
understand.
hope that the commissioners would live up to that sense.
I want to comment. I disagree with our manager. I completely respect where he's trying to take us. He's trying to take us to a place of fiscal responsibility, and we need that right now. However, we just happen to be, we have another agenda item here with the police department, and I say this all the time. We never once ask our police officers to open their wallet and pay for the cars they drive. We never ask them to pay for the police department building. And here's a case where we have between Radnor Township and Lower Merion Fire Department, we have over 100 people that volunteer their time every single day, every single minute, every single hour. And in a spirit of full disclosure, my sons are in Bryn Mawr Firehouse, and they get up in the middle of the night at 2 in the morning to go chase a fire that the rest of us don't want to chase. So we have to appreciate the service that they provide. And the way we do that is we make their jobs safe. We provide safe equipment. We provide a safe fire department. We make sure that that building is safe for them, and we make sure that the equipment they ride in is safe and the gear they wear is safe. And I can't speak for the board, but I think we all have a sense that we need this service. And while this is a big expense, what's the alternative? Haverford Township has 5 fire department buildings, structures, 5 firehouses. Lower Merion has 6 or 7. I'm not quite sure the total. Radnor has 1. So we need to provide expeditious service in firefighting and other emergency service. How do we do that with 1 firehouse? So we need to look to Lower Merion as a partner, and they've been a great partner for decades. And we have to own this responsibility. If we want to have a safe community and we want to have efficient fire service, we need to rely on Lower Merion. And we have to fund that operation in some way. And we've obviously done that. We've stepped up to the plate. In the last 10 years, we've given $900,000, $400,000 in capital, $467,000 in annual operating contributions. But I even look at the contributions we give, and I say, well, why aren't we giving a little bit more? They provide, 40% of their time is spent in Radnor.
John, what was the 100,000 capital contribution last year?
That was to fund the ladder. So we stepped up to the plate, and there's no question this board has continuously stepped up to the plate. And this is an unusual circumstance before us. Look, I'm the first one that wants to cut spending. I'm telling you, I'm the first one. I'm the cheapest guy in this room, I guarantee it.
That's why you got to remember that when we have all these other requests.
I do remember that. But in this
Except
case,
the fire company.
the alternative for me, I'm just going to give it to you in a nutshell. If we don't fund this project, and if we can't rely on Bryn Mawr Firehouse for our service, this board will have to consider building a new fire department structure, a new firehouse in Radnor, and the cost of siting and building a structure and providing the equipment is about $5 million.
Why do you say that? I mean, Bob, do we have any sense if, for example, for argument's sake, just if we did what Haverford did and said, you know what, let's just service it out of Radnor. At the extremes of the township where Bryn Mawr services the Radnor, what would be the difference in response time? Do we have any sense of that?
I'm sure it would be increased to cover that particular area in fire, but to toss numbers out there, it would cost X amount of dollars to do that. To be creative in ways, if that was something the commissioners wanted us to look at for those costs, I think there's ways in which you can do that, in which you can partner with certain individuals to do that. But again, the issue isn't, we're drifting from the issue of the floor. We're going into police and everywhere else, which is not the issue. The issue is a floor issue that is not here in Radnor Township. It's in Lower Merion Township.
Who owns the
Charlie, if I
firehouse?
could.
Bryn Mawr Fire Company.
Charlie, I grew up in Lower Merion, and I'm sad to say I probably can't recall all of them, but aside from Bryn Mawr, Penwyn, Gladwyn, and Bala, are there other fire companies?
Yes, Belmont Hills,
Belmont
Ardmore.
Hills.
The borough of Narberth also is
Narberth.
big in mutual aid.
So
And
there's
this is
6?
Chief Chaz McGarvey. If you have any other responding
but-
type questions, he might.
I'm just curious, in Lower Merion, what's the square mileage that you cover,
24.6.
as opposed to our 13.6, is it? AJ, do you know?
I think it's 14.8,
13.8.
13.8. Okay.
Well, and I mean, Radnor's talked about, auxiliary station in Garrett Hill or something, I've heard it over the years. It would be very, very expensive, but, I represent an area that's served by Radnor, not Bryn Mawr, although Bryn Mawr's the backup. And we do the worst thing to the manager and to everybody, whether it's, turf field or, if we want something, and we decide to do it, we just have to work with it. And I have no problem supporting a sizable contribution to this floor and justifying that with my constituents in the 3rd Ward. So I'm willing to support this, so we get a sense of the board. If we can get 4 members that are willing to do this, the manager won't like it, but we make the final decision. We have to live with it. We have to raise taxes, and I'm willing to do that.
I completely agree that this is an important service. There's a need to keep it safe. Of course, we have a moral obligation, a general obligation to support the fire company. But from what I've heard tonight, this is a situation that's been that we've been facing for 20 years. And I haven't heard an imminent danger or imminent lack of safety. I would be more comfortable agreeing on committing to fund this over the next several years and plan for it. $200,000 out of our 2010 budget, it's not there. So what we would be doing is cutting something else. And we've cut to the bone already. So I find this put in this position of coming up with this money now when we haven't planned for it, when it doesn't sound to me like the sky is going to fall tomorrow. This floor needs to be replaced, and I would completely support a planned contribution towards replacing it over the, putting money aside for the next few years and replacing it. It's been like this for 20 years. it sounds like we would get signs if it was becoming imminently dangerous, but it isn't right now. And until we're at that point, I would prefer to plan for this expense, even if it's, you know, $50,000 for the next 4 years or $75,000 for the next 3 or whatnot. Reaching back to our 2010 budget, which we are already in a huge deficit, is going to mean making some really, you know, perhaps losing more staff. I mean, we can't afford to lose more staff. So I find this puts us in a really difficult position, having to come up with this money now.
Has any thought been given to taking out a loan and then refunding it or paying it back over time with contributions from the municipalities? Doug, have you thought about that?
I'm sympathetic to the commissioner's point. Obviously, this is cash that Lower Merion doesn't have sitting aside for this purpose either. I don't know that this is much of a cash issue as it is of a partnership issue. So there's probably ways that we could work this out that would address Radnor's cash issues if they wanted to make a contribution over time. I think the fire company could also do that, whether it be through loans or through their equity or through Lower Merion's equity.
I have a question. How did you come up with the $200,000?
Approximately 40% of the runs from the company.
Well, we've been told 25% of the land masses in Radnor Township, 35% of the calls were made in 2009 to Radnor Township, and 40% of the 2010 year-to-date calls. So you've selected the most optimal.
No, we were presented with a 5-year, 10-year, I forget which.
Well, I'm just reciting the numbers, John, that were given here tonight.
Yeah, I'm just telling you that we were given more detail.
Okay, I was not.
Right.
So, you know, what I'm looking at, if I was supportive, $420,000, because look, your $50,000 of your engineering is sunk costs. 25% is $100,000, 35% is about $150,000. I'm sympathetic to where you are, but I also don't like the fact that, you know, we're being told here 2 days before it's due that we have to make a decision. To me, that's kind of political gamesmanship.
Well, we notified Radnor Township of this in early August. I respect that we're 2 days beforehand, but we did notify you of interest in being a funding partner about 7 weeks ago. We realize it takes time. It does in Lower Merion too. So I apologize, and I have already, for how we got to today, and I do understand the awkwardness that you are placed in terms of the timing of this matter.
How would the board feel? Would they be willing to support if an alternative funding could be come up with where we would spread the payments over 4 years beginning 2011?
Well, it's premature for me. I'll tell you, this is my framework for the decision. One, I'd have to know that there's some kind of proportional representation, so I don't know what that number is, but it would have to be proportional. Second, I'd have to know offsets that we would make internally. We would evaluate them and then choose. And then third, I'd have to know that that there's no alternative, which, you know, so I'm not in a position
less
tonight.
expensive alternative.
Yes, and like things like other buildings, other locations, temporary buildings, prefabricated buildings, selling the fleet and changing the fleet. So like for me, there's a heavenly host of alternatives that I would have to evaluate or know that someone evaluated before I was willing to make that a commitment like this. So I'm undecided, but that's the framework that I would need to make my decision.
Philosophically, I'm not. I think, you know, we're serviced by them. I think we should make a fair and reasonable contribution. That being said, I think it needs to be done as part of the budget process and our evaluation of what's out there in 2011 and potentially in the out years. And to just sit here tonight and make an ironclad commitment, I'm very uncomfortable with that.
Mr. Chairman, if I can. Will the Bryn Mawr Fire Company be making a contribution towards this?
We're still trying to explore the options that we have. I mean, I suspect that any contribution that we would make, we would try to fund through contributions through our residents and whatnot. I mean, we do have a cash reserve, but with floor and apparatus and all the different things that are out there, I mean, that cash reserve can be gone very quickly. So, I mean, anything that we would commit to would probably be, you know, like through our residents and through any foundations or any contributions. Again, contributions would have to be, you know, figured out into that.
And I just know by looking at your 990 form and the way the township will end up here, your cash reserve will be greater than the township's cash reserve.
What is the cash reserve?
I think approximately 2,150,000 is
Not
what
that I'm aware of.
is your,
Now, that may include the apparatus, the cost of the apparatus might be in there, but I believe it's, well, I think, Rich?
I would assume that regardless of the action we take tonight, you will be exploring grants through the government also.
Absolutely.
When I spoke with Congressman Sestak, he indicated he thought there would be a high likelihood of getting funding, not for the whole project, next year, but that this year was closed out.
Well, that was the answer that we had from just about all
Yeah,
of
and
the
that's what I
politicians.
spoke directly with Representative Adolph and Lentz, and they said the same thing.
So is it a viable option for Bryn Mawr Fire Company to fund the project on its own and try to replenish its capital fund through contributions from governmental institutions?
I would like to think that it's not something that we have to, but if it's what we have to do, it's what we have to do, because we have to stay in business to support the community, whether it's Lower Merion Township or Radnor Township. Lower Merion Township has stepped up to the plate and, you know, has worked right through it. As I said, we started this a year and a half ago, and I brought Bob Zinkowski into the loop on this back in May. I believe it was May when we met, to let him know what it was, and quickly thereafter is when I met with Commissioners Nagel, and I was here in August for the meeting. So I mean, it's like I've tried to keep you informed, and I believe I quoted all those numbers at the Commissioners meeting in August. So as far as I know, everyone was aware of what we were talking about back in August. But how Bryn Mawr Fire Company would handle it, you know, like, with the absence of any type of municipal funding from Lower Merion or Radnor, I mean, we would have to figure a way to get it done. On a time frame, it would just have to be done, because it's what we have to do.
What's in the 2011 capital budget?
Nothing.
Zero?
Yeah. Well, we have,
We had a 5-year projection.
Well, we have, what is the balance of the capital fund at this moment?
Well, the balance of the capital fund, I think, and I'm going off memory here, will be a little over $1 million at the end of this year. However, 100% of those proceeds, as best as we can figure going back, is made up of bond proceeds, which raises another budgetary type of discussion on how those are used moving forward. The capital plan that was adopted last December, or at the end of last year at some point, showed anticipated expenditures in 2011 of $632,700. We're currently working on the updated numbers for 2011 now as part of our annual review of that. So as of right now, the best number we have to go on is the plan that was approved a year ago, and that's the $632,700 number.
Excuse me, Commissioner, I believe
Yes.
our fund balance nets out at around $600,000 at the moment. The one important thing is that the interest that we earn on that money helps us balance our operational budget each year.
all right, well, we can't sit here all night and
No.
negotiate. So, I mean, I'll just make a motion to sense of the board that, the sense of the board being that we would give $100,000 next year and $50,000 in the 2 following years to support this project.
Second?
We have a motion made and seconded for the sense of the board. Any further?
What's the motion again?
The motion is that we would commit $100,000 in 2011, and that we would commit $50,000 in 2012 and 2013 to pay for this project. And that the $100,000 contribution in 2011 would be in the beginning of the year.
So your proposal is to give them the full $200,000 to the
Yes.
transfer?
So, I mean, I think that's quite a mistake. We have not seen numbers to know that that's proportional. We don't know what impact it would have on our own capital needs. So in my humble opinion, we've not done the analysis.
Don, can you
Determine-
just, can you explain proportional to me? We're being,
We have different numbers that talk about what that proportion of calls, what amount our contribution
Okay.
should be. So I understand that it should be relative to the service provided to Radnor, but I've heard conflicting information.
what we may need is an average number of calls per year over the last 10 years.
Commissioner, over the last 5 years, every fire company and fire department is required to report to the National Fire Incident Reporting System the number of calls, and so that the National Fire Service can start getting statistics on these kinds of things. I gave Commissioner Zeloff a copy of the last 5 years' statistics, which equal out to 41.87% of calls in Radnor Township for Bryn Mawr Fire
That's fine.
Company.
I just can't make a decision on this amount of money just based upon a simple description. I would need more than
I can give you that
simply that.
information.
Yes,
if
I
you
would.
need.
So I'm not decided one way or another, but I'm unwilling to make that contribution based on what little information I've heard.
I also think too, just on part of that, I mean, those are the calls, I believe that 41% is the Bryn Mawr Fire Company, the calls in the Radnor Township. But I believe the total number of calls, fire calls within Radnor Township is about 19%.
I can give you the breakdown right now. 1/1/2005 to 12/31/2005, 39.88%, or 211 calls out of 529 incidents were in Radnor Township. In 2006, 36.85, or 199 calls out of 540 incidents were in Radnor Township. 1/1/2007 to 12/31/2000, 43.35%, or 261 calls out of 602 incidents. In 2008, 46.12%, or 232 calls out of 503 incidents. In 2009, 36.85%, or 199 calls out of 540 incidents. From January 1st until July 6th, it was 43.91%, or 119 calls out of 271 incidents.
Do you have that broken down by residents versus institutions?
I don't have it here like that, but I can tell you what that, I can get those numbers
Okay,
by
I'd
breaking it
appreciate
down in the
knowing,
system.
knowing that, how much of that is.
I mean, this is just incidents.
No, I understand you,
Total.
but that would be something that would be useful for me to understand. If, for
Broken
example,
down as institutions?
yeah,
or-
for example, if, if 50% of the, 40% that were made this year were made to, Villanova and Agnes Irwin. I can get that for the last five. Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
But the issue with me is, in supporting the 200,000 is that we have a partnership with the Bryn Mawr Fire Company, and we're going to have to give them more money next year and the year after that and year after that for other capital projects and for other things, and we will continue to have a discussion. This 200,000 isn't, here's 200,000, go away. If in our future negotiations, if we feel the 200,000 should have been 160 or 170, you can debate that. But the fact of the matter is that we will be talking with Bryn Mawr Fire Company and cooperating, working with them over the next 20 years on apparatus and on and supporting their operation. So we have plenty of opportunity to discuss this. I believe this project has to be done. I see all the support here from the people involved in it. I'm willing to support them in our continued negotiations on other projects if commissioners feel, after looking at all the numbers and everything, that we gave them an extra 10, 15, 20, or 30,000 that we shouldn't have. In their eyes, we can always negotiate on other apparatus and other projects with Bryn Mawr Fire Company.
Charlie,
We appreciate that, Commissioner, but for the last 10 years, as long as I've been involved, we have always sat down with Radnor Township
know.
and projected out a 10-year plan. It's not like we just come in, it's always been organized.
One of
We've
the
always worked
one of the
through
most
that.
impressive things as a commissioner, 20 years in Radnor Township, is the way the Radnor Fire Company and the Bryn Mawr Fire Company has worked with us. They've at times that we've budgeted a piece of apparatus for 1995, and they've come to us and said, "No, we decided we don't need that till '97."
Right.
And we've worked. It's been great.
Right.
And the support and we've gotten from Radnor and from Bryn Mawr, and the way they've worked with us on the budgeting and all has been tremendous. This example not being one of them, but I have 20 years of experience of tremendous cooperation, and really Radnor and Bryn Mawr working with us on tight budgets and all kinds of things. So
We appreciate that.
Charlie,
Yes, sir.
one question for you. The purchase of the ladder truck, how much was that for?
$760,000.
And how did you fund that?
$377,000 was paid by Lower Township. $100,000 was paid by Radnor Township. We had originally requested $150,000, but they covered $100,000. And then the rest was from the sale of our other truck and our own money.
So you took money out of your fund balance?
Not really, because we're, as I said earlier in my presentation, we have an 8-year cycle of selling our trucks, and but in so doing, we're able to sell our present trucks or our existing trucks for more money than just letting them run 20 years. So we were able to not any out-of-pocket money.
And I'm sure you're like the Radnor Fire Company. For your operational needs, you have various fundraisers. You already said you send out letters to people.
We do, yes. Our
Probably
fund
have the
drive.
spaghetti dinners and...
We really don't get involved in that because we have our fund drive and we put out most of our effort behind that, but we do other things. But our main focus is our fund drive because there's so much out there today, it gets too much.
Have you attempted to do any special capital fund drives for any of your pieces of equipment or the renovation of the building or anything of that nature?
Well, up until this point, most of our capital needs have been covered by Lower Township and Radnor Township and existing equipment sales. That's been able to cover that. What we were just talking about in the last 6 months to a year at Bryn Mawr Fire Company is what we can do to have a capital campaign to fund a scholarship fund. We have a scholarship fund to recruit volunteers, which already Bryn Mawr Fire Company funds $10,000 of our own money each year into that scholarship fund. Because the way we look at what we do is our job is to cover the labor side of the fire service. I mean, so we're out looking for ways, and the capital campaign that we're looking at right now is to fund the scholarship, increase that, and add to our retention program, maybe a retirement plan for the volunteers that spend 25 years. So this is what we're looking at. So if we have to go back out and go after capital money for apparatus or for building needs, we're gonna lose money to what we need to do to cover our labor side of things.
Can you explain that a little bit to me? Because you said you're a volunteer, so work for a volunteer company. So how do you have labor costs?
Our labor costs, we have 3 full-time engineers that are caretakers of the building, that take care of the building and all the apparatus while we're there. There's two that work 8 to 5, and they alternate 24 and 24 shifts too. So we have 3 full-time employees, and the rest is all volunteer.
What are your annual labor costs?
I'd have to check with Rich, but I would say it's somewhere around $350,000.
So you're paying these people $120,000 a year, including benefits?
No,
Well, how
I
do you
mean, we
have-
have 3 people. We have part-timers that come in to fill in when there's vacations and whatnot. In that number's included health care costs, so I mean, it's around the total cost package for the 3 full-time employees, the 2 part-time employees, and any additional part-time drivers that we bring in to cover shifts, along with health care costs for the full-time people. It runs us about $350,000.
I'd like to allow some public comment. Also recognize we're talking about a sense of the board motion, not a commitment, and we would all want to see those kind of numbers that Commissioner Curley mentioned prior to any final commitment. So let's give the public an opportunity to comment.
I'm Kathy Harris. I live on Llewellyn Court. Every year I get a solicitation from the Radnor Fire Department for a contribution of minimum of $35, and I contribute. And then I hear at a meeting that 16% of Radnor Township contributes to the fire department, and you just said 16% contributes to Lower Merion. I think
That was on the
people-
business side, 25%. Go ahead.
Anyway, people ought to be ashamed of themselves. We have a volunteer fire department, and when they have a fire, they can call the fire department, but they aren't willing to contribute a minimum amount to support it. If everybody contributed what they should, the average income in Radnor is $100,000 a year. I think everybody can afford $35 to support the fire departments. And I think that the residents ought to be ashamed of themselves for not doing that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christina Peroni. I have a couple of questions regarding Lower Merion's contribution. Would their contribution, or can we ask them as one of the parameters to have their contribution to go directly to the actual construction and not to pay for their engineer? I mean, our engineers and our staff work, and you know, we normally have that as just part of our costs. They're trying to recover their engineer's cost as part of their cost. So I would ask, when we're ready to make that contribution, to make it, number one, don't make any contribution until we know what Lower Merion's doing. I think it's, I don't agree with us making contribution without knowing what they're contributing. If we come and say we're going to give you $200,000, and then Lower Merion could turn around and say we're going to give $100,000. I mean, we don't. No disrespect to Lower Merion, but we should know exactly what they're contributing.
Lower
before
Marion's on
we-
the hook for the project. They have to approve the project. They're on the hook for the whole amount.
Well, it that's not really true, because the chief, or whoever that, I'm sorry, person was speaking, said that they might get a loan. So, you know, if they didn't get any money, they said they'd get a loan. So let's just make sure Lower Merion is paying their proportional share, which was, I think, what Mr. Curley was saying. And then, secondly, I loved what Mr. Higgins was saying, which was, let's get a definitive amount of what our institutions are costing in this regard, because it's time for them to step up, get to the table, and make the contributions, because a third of our population is actually our institutions. And so it's a big burden for the residents to be carrying the institutions. It's time for them to step up to the plate. And I would say that we should have some formal way of asking them. I don't know how to do that, but there should be some formal way of asking them for their proportionate share of paying this fee. And of course, we all appreciate what the firemen do. We're grateful we have them. We want to support them. But I also agree that we need to do this in a fiscally appropriate way. So if you guys want to contribute $200,000, then look at the capital budget and let's tell the community what you're taking off for $200,000, because the money's not endless. Just like you said, Mr. Spengler, when I believe $250,000 was spent on a turf field, we'd love to probably get that money back right now. But that was spent in a vacuum, and I would ask this board to not spend the money in a vacuum. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any further comments?
Good evening. Dan Sherry, Wayne. Commissioner Fisher, I apologize. I was distracted in the audience, but I thought I heard you say that you have two sons that are active in the Bryn Mawr Fire Department?
As volunteers, yes.
Okay. Without speaking as to the pros and cons of this sense of the board vote that I guess is forthcoming, I would just like to remind you, Commissioner Fisher, that you've spoken rather eloquently in the past about the necessity of members on this board to avoid conflicts of interest, and to a large part, sir, you followed your own advice. In the past several months, I've come to this board and spoken out about what I see as very significant actual or apparent conflicts with respect to two commissioners on this board and their relationship with the Radnor Conservancy. Now, I know your situation here is a little bit different. It's not you who are volunteering at the Bryn Mawr Fire Department, but it is your sons. And I would caution you about voting on issues that directly impact close family members, including your kids. And again, I understand that this is not a vote tonight to actually pledge money. It's a vote to, I guess, indicate whether this board in the future may decide to go in a particular direction. But I would consider utilizing this opportunity to distinguish yourself and to continue on that precedent of stating that when a vote comes before this board, to the extent it impacts a board member directly or a board member's family member directly, that board member take a long, hard look at it and do the first thing you did, which is disclose the issue, and then seriously consider not voting. Thank you.
In listening to the discussion, I think that there are really more potential pockets than what you've identified. I mean, basically, it's Lower Merion Township and Radnor Township. I mean, obviously, with your fund balance, and I realize that people don't like to touch that, but these are trying times for you and for us and for Lower Merion and other municipalities in southeastern Pennsylvania. So I think that the fire company itself really should consider going into that fund balance and contributing something to this. In addition to that, you talked about going to other governmental entities. Congressman Sestak was mentioned as one, potentially the state. I'm not sure whether Montgomery County has been approached on something like this, but I certainly think that you really need to exhaust all those possibilities so that you can get this funding. And then there's the private donors. And I realize that you make an annual pitch, if you will, for contributions from the community. But I think a special capital contribution campaign really needs to be looked at very hard so that the cost to the taxpayers in both municipalities is kept to a minimum. I'm willing to go along with the sense of the board, not at the levels that you identified, Bill, but at some lower level, if the fire company is willing to commit to a contribution on its own and going through the necessary steps to initiate a special capital contribution campaign and to go to the private donors. I mean, you said that you've done that to a certain extent. I don't know what that is, but I certainly think it's something which you need to do. And perhaps in partnership with the township, our township, Lower Merion, that can be explored in a greater fashion. And I realize you're up against a time deadline here. Believe me, I recognize that, and I think first responders are some of the most important people that we have in our community. But I think we need to do all these things, and I'm willing to follow the sense of the board if we get these commitments from the fire company to do these things. Is that on the table?
It has been on our table for the last 6 months, trying to sort this out as far as the funding goes and what our primary sources are. We've already been to the political scene. We've already started talking to the foundation. So, I mean, we've been on this for the last 6 months.
And one of the things you're doing, you're committed for $70,000.
We have, only this week when we met with Radnor Township and Lower Merion Township, where the $200,000, $200,000, and $70,000 to Bryn Mawr Fire Company. Okay, our board is meeting tomorrow evening to discuss our contribution. Okay, with the back and forth of this whole issue and understanding it, you know, we didn't really know what our commitment was going to need to be able to, you know, say, okay, this is how much money we need to come up with. That's just this week, because up until then it was just speculative financial, you know, talking about this, that, you know, Lower Merion, Radnor, all this. Now we know exactly what it is. Unfortunately, to Doug's point, it's like after Thursday, it's all off the table and we start all over again. Is what the problem is. Because what is $420,000 or $470,000 now could be $570,000 or $650,000 next week.
Bill, could I offer a modification to your motion?
Well, that's just a sense of the board. My motion, do we have 4 votes for my motion? Just me and you?
No,
Okay.
but I would like if you would consider 50-50-50, but with the understanding that we're going to work, us and the staff will work to help them identify other funding sources, and as much as they can collect, we get a refund if necessary, as would Lower Merion.
I'd be much more comfortable with 50-50-50. I don't think 100 next year is appropriate.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I can get.
Let's be clear on what that 50, is that 50 in total, or is that a 50 in addition
It's
to?
150,000, 50 next year, 50 the next following 2 years.
That's not my question.
Oh.
Is, you know, if you look at our running total, we've contributed about $40,000.
This is a special contribution just for this project,
So we're talking about 90 now next year, a little bit over 90.
if we continue to
Right.
fund at those levels, yes.
You know, I believe we should make a fair and reasonable contribution based upon the level of service that we provide. And I believe we have inadequate information to
Right.
commit to a number. And philosophically, I think we ought to be contributing our fair share. I just don't know what that number is, and I'm uncomfortable committing to a number.
And if the motion fails, then I'm going to
Okay.
present
Well, then
something
I'll
similar to
change
what-
my motion to 50,000 next year, 50,000 in 2012, and 50,000 in 2013.
John, you want a second?
No, I don't want a second. I'll put my own motion out.
All right.
Could I add to that, Bill? That
Well, if John's not going to second, John, what are you up to?
Well, let me just, Kevin just stated that we don't have enough information. I just want to restate the numbers. The average over the last 5 years is 41.8% of their calls in
But
their
you don't know
town.
how much of that
We
is
went over
is-
that, John.
is-
Let's just talk the
is
figures.
Township
There's a heavenly
residents
hope
versus
that it could be-
institutions.
I mean, perhaps there are
You're
other
not gonna
ways to
convince me,
evaluate
John.
that
Let's just
number.
vote.
Perhaps it should be evaluated on the type of call. Perhaps it should be evaluated on the
Hey.
value of the real estate.
So
perspective.
we're gonna, let me get this straight. You smell smoke in your house,
John.
and you're gonna decide whether or not to call the fire department, or they're gonna decide
No,
whether or
John,
not to
I don't know
respond.
what all these calls are for.
Yeah.
So
It's their calls, and they have to be
Okay.
made.
And when they roll out of the house,
John,
they don't leave.
usually I have more
All right.
respect for you that you
Okay.
usually are more
Gentlemen,
logical, but you're now
gentlemen,
kind
yeah.
of
I'm
like
extremely
just throwing
logical
gasoline
here.
on a fire
I
to
make
create
the same
emotion on it.
argument.
Order.
Okay.
We have
Order.
responsibility.
Excuse me, I'm going to second Bill's motion.
All right.
We have a motion for 50-50-50 with the understanding that we'll get full facts and figures to support it, and that we will work with them to help them raise funds, and we and Lower Merion also will get rebates to the extent that exceeds the amount.
you think
Rebates
your
on
board
what?
will go with that, Doug?
Well, in other words, if we can get a federal grant for $500,000,
Well,
I can't speak for my board, but I certainly would think that that particular motion would be well received by members of the board commissioners. I can't speak for whether a majority of them would or not. I think that in my opinion, I would certainly be speaking appropriately about it.
Okay, thank you.
okay, call
Well,
the vote. I'm
It's
going to
been
call the
moved in
vote.
second.
Yeah, Bill moved, I second.
Can I, public discussion, or, board discussion on this, or not?
Yes, has to
Okay.
be.
I just, look, I look at the last 9 years, 10 years, and in my opinion, we've underfunded this organization. And I'll tell you why. The average number of calls is 41.8% over the last 5 years, and we've not provided that percentage. If you want to talk about representation or weighting, we haven't done it, and we're about to do it again. We're about to offer 150,000 of 480,000. It's less than 1/3. Again, we're not meeting. It should be, in my mind, to be fair, to be respectful of what we're trying to do here. It should be 40% of the cost. We can all argue about what those costs are in the end. We can all debate that, but what we know is what we know. We know right now the number is 41.8%. We've been given these documents. They show this. They bear this out. So the question I have is, can we try to get a motion on the table that's more towards 40%? And then if we get the grants, if we get repaid on these contributions, great. I'm very much in favor of that. I'd very much like to see that happen.
John, we don't have the votes. Okay, we tried that already. We got a motion on the floor for $150,000, 50 cents to the board. Let's do it. You can always do something else next week, next year, the year after if you get the votes. But let's go what we have tonight.
Any further board comment? Any further public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate
you need to call
everything.
for opposed.
Yeah, we need the opposed so we can document and abstain. Opposed?
Opposed.
2.
Okay.
Any abstentions? No.
Thank you.
And to the manager, let me say, we will try and behave in the future. Just keep working with us. We're going to do the best we can.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item on the public safety agenda is Resolution 2010-47 regarding the Firefighters Relief Association agreement. Somebody from staff want to lead on this one?
Sure. What this is an agreement that the Radnor Fire Company has brought forward in front of the commissioners. The Pennsylvania State Auditor General had asked for the Relief Association an agreement that if the equipment and the brackets, the mounting brackets that went on this piece of equipment, that if that equipment was sold, that apparatus and the brackets would be returned back to the Relief Association.
I'll move the approval of the resolution.
Second.
Moved and second, and any discussion? Any public discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is a Crime Watch update. John Fisher, I believe you wanted to discuss this?
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on the crime issues in my ward, and I think what we've seen is a lot of uptick in criminal activity. It's anecdotal, but I mean, I'm getting a lot of complaints. I'm getting a lot of concern. Certainly, a lot of this is probably related to the economy and the issues that we're seeing as a nation, but what I'd like to do is just get the discussion going. AJ, if you could comment on this and what the department's doing to head off these issues and what the community can do to do their part. And then I'd also like to talk about the involvement of Town Watch and how we can get that group involved.
I would agree with you. There has been an uptick in both burglaries and petty larcenies, mainly from thefts from vehicles. This year alone, we've had a total of 41 burglaries. 32 of those were residential, both attempts and actual burglaries. Last time we had a year like this was probably back in 2007, when we had a total year of 37 residential burglaries. Mr. Higgins will recall that's when his ward got hit hard. It was also hit hard on Aldwin Lane.
My house got hit.
It's correct. We're not alone. Quite frankly, I'm going to give a couple stats we asked around. We've been sharing a lot of information with other townships. And Upper Marion, 37 residential. Tredyffrin, 23. They're actually low this year. They're not usually that low. Easttown, 33. They probably have 2/3 the residents, 1/2 the residents we do. So they're right in line with us. Haverford Township, 42. And Lower Marion, the exact quote was approaching 200 residential burglaries. So you're correct. I believe a lot of this has to do with the economy. People are out of work. The price of gold this time last year was 30% less. What we're seeing is most of the people in the burglaries are victims of taking jewelry. They're going in there just for the gold jewelry. They're leaving the big expensive TVs and what have you. What we found in the past is many of these people committing the burglaries are just doing it for the quick cash. As was the case when we finally solved many of the burglaries from 2007. It was an uncle and nephew team, and they were responsible for a great many of the burglaries, and they were doing it for their quick cash for their drugs. And I would assume by the way they're taking jewelry now, we probably have the same situation. And you definitely have more than one group. There's similarities between certain areas and certain times of the night. So most likely you have more than one group doing this, and it's always pretty much been the case. With those crime alerts, it gives a sense we're having more, and we are, but it's also alerting the neighbors that there is a problem. And with those crime alerts we put out there, notifying of the crime, we also give crime tips, such things as report suspicious activities. A lot of times we go back to people, whether it's the neighbor or whether it's them, they've heard something, they didn't want to call us, they thought it really wasn't too suspicious or didn't want to bother us at that time, but it was important, and they should call us, and residents shouldn't worry about notifying us, because that's our job. We'll check it out for them, and a lot of times we can prevent issues. A recent burglary occurred, and then the neighbors are calling now a week later saying, yeah, somebody knocked on my door. I thought they were suspicious, but I didn't want to bother you. Well, that's a big ruse. A lot of time these people will knock on the door, see if you're home. If you're not home, they'll go around to the back door, kick the door open. So if you feel that person's suspicious, trust your gut, call us. We'll be more than happy to check it out. Some other, crime tips for this, make sure you lock your home. We get a lot of people that don't lock their doors, whether it's their home or their cars, and they become victims of crime. Big to lock your doors. A lot of times they don't want to make the noise, especially at night, to wake people up, and they will go by and not in your home. Garage doors are another big thing. If your garage is wide open and there's no cars in there, it's a pretty good indicator to that person when they're driving by that there's no one home. So they'll stop by and try to get into the house that way. We just had a burglary discovered today. She was away for 20 days. We have a program called the Vacant House Watch. Our officers, you can sign up for it. Our officers will come by and check your house while you're away on vacation. We did.
AJ, can I just, that
Go ahead.
is an outstanding program. You guys are extraordinarily responsive. I left on a plane one morning, and my back door was, the sliding door was unlocked. You guys had contacted me before my plane landed in Utah to tell me that you guys had been out to the house.
Thank you.
And you know, within hours after I left, you guys had been out there, and I appreciate that.
Well, not only does it, help with the burglaries, we found broken pipes, other issues, open doors, like you said. So it's a nice service we provide. We did 18,700 of them last year. So it is a good service, but yet a lot of people don't know. And you can call up and request that, or you can go to the website, on the police website at www.radnor.com and sign up there as well. While you're away, it's big to try to get your neighbors to watch as well. We can't watch 24/7. Get the neighbors to help you watch. If they see something suspicious, call us. The obvious things, don't leave your mail pile up. Don't let the newspapers there. That other burglary was reported today. Unfortunately, there was a handyman that went around and left a hang tag on the front door. Well, nothing says you're not home like a hang tag on your front door for 2 weeks. And it makes it very easy for somebody to realize you're not home and become a victim of a burglary. With that said, again, call for suspicious people. You're probably right more times than you're wrong, and we'd much rather come check it out now and help you avoid a problem. I believe one of the people in our burglary saw the person walking up their drive and said hi to him, and he didn't acknowledge her, and then she left and then came back and was a victim of the burglary. You see strange cars, strange people, again, call us, we'll check it out. Do not confront these people. Call us. That's what we are there for. We will come check them out. And again, keep an eye on your neighbors, because that's what it's all about. Take care of your neighborhood, watch around with your neighbors, get to know them. Unfortunately, sometimes people don't get to know their neighbors and don't know who their next door neighbor is, but that's very important in solving and stopping a lot of these crimes.
Thanks, Lieutenant. I think next, Gene Bascom is
Real
here.
quick, Commissioner, I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
Sure.
Just some of the things we've been doing. We haven't been in a vacuum here. We have put some guys out, in plain clothes, watching. If you've been watching the weekly reports, they're out there at night. These guys are doing a great job of finding things at night. A while back, and it wasn't that far back, but Officer Spelkus came across a carload, 3 individuals. They had a whole mess of stuff in the car, and we eventually found out it came from many jurisdictions around us, GPSs. They were stealing change. We solved a lot of car thefts in that regard. Sergeant Flanagan.
That was in my neighborhood, in
Correct.
fact. Yeah.
Sergeant Flanagan, again in your neighborhood, unfortunately, came upon 2 individuals with, in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning. One had a stolen laptop from Boxwood Road, so we got the one escaped. Sergeant Block did all that great work, did some search warrants, made a second arrest in that case with the person that we believe was there. I've also moved an extra detective from patrol. He's actually assigned as an investigator to start assisting the detectives in the caseloads, because a lot of this information, a lot of the solving of these crimes comes from information sharing and going out and interviewing people or going out with other police officers and getting a lot of information. And we've solved a lot of crimes that way as well.
Lieutenant, can I just confirm, I've had so many of my residents say, well, you have to call 911 when you call, so they get intimidated, and it's not an emergency, it's just a suspicious guy at the end of my street. So can you just confirm and explain that just because you're dialing 911 doesn't mean, a screeching squad car is going to come down, that is also set up for non-emergency situations?
That's correct. 911 is how we dispatch our officers here. It goes through a county system. 911 is well recognized, obviously, by the public, has been for 20-some years. But in our township, whether you want to report a barking dog, a suspicious person, or a crime in progress, just dial 911 and they'll take the complaint.
All right, thank you. Sure, come up.
Could we get some clarity on the knocking on the door thing? Like, what are we supposed to do as residents? Like, people knock on your door and they're really checking out if your house is empty or not? Like, I don't, like, what kind of things, do we know anything about who's doing that, or, like, what should we do?
Well, obviously, people do come to your door, knocking on the door legitimately. But
Right.
a lot of times you get with the knocking on the door, they'll be startled that you're there, or they'll give you some excuse about some imaginary person that they're looking for, or they'll talk gibberish and try to confuse you, and then they'll walk away. So trust your gut. If you think it's legitimate, it's fine. If you think it's not, call us. We'll check it out.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lieutenant. I've invited Jean Bascom is here. She's I want to say she's the president of Town Watch, maybe founder, co-founder of Town Watch. Would you like to come up and just speak to us about your activity and your plea for volunteerism? And in the meantime, I'll just mention that I appreciate everything the police department's been doing. There have been a lot of great, in addition to those news flashes that we get, the updates, we also get tips, and there are tips on the website at radnor.com. And you can also, in addition to that information, you can stop your newspaper, stop your mail, all online if you have online service, and if not, you can mail the postcards in. I believe the post office has cards that they have cards that you can fill out and leave in your mailbox, and the post office will stop your mail for a determined amount of time. That's obviously a great way to prevent people from realizing that you're away. And certainly tell your neighbors. I'm guilty of this, forgetting to tell my neighbors. They're the best ones that can help out. They're going to keep an eye on the house. They'll pick up your newspapers in the driveway and all those other things that are left behind that would indicate that you're not home. Jean?
Yes. Town Watch just celebrated its 33rd year of operation, and we are totally not on your budget line, so you don't have to get nervous. We have existed on donations from the public, and mostly from the big flea market at Chilton, which we are no longer doing. We are in the midst of two things. I'm doing a mini fund to Radnor, some Radnor residents for funds. And then we're also doing a membership drive letter to go out because we are really in need of both. We have, please, the original equipment that was donated from the Wayne Sporting Goods store years ago, and it is still going strong. We're all right, but it needs to be updated. And so that's why we're looking for funds, members, and it's a neat way for the community to get to learn one another. It's a neat way for us to learn what it's like to be a police officer and have to do what they have to do and never know when they're going to do it, because it's just last minute stuff that comes in and you have to really respond quick. And I did meet with Lieutenant Antonini and went over a few things with him as the as to what we're doing, so that he's fully informed. And so if anybody can push Town Watch for us, it would really help us.
Gene, I
And
just want
then we can help everybody.
It might help the community know what the difference between Town Watch and the police are. I think we want to make it clear that the Town Watch are not in lieu of the police. They don't do the police work.
I am very glad you asked that question.
It's very important that if you want to join Town Watch, you're not going to get a badge. You're not going to be able to make arrests. But Jean, could you explain what Town Watch does?
I bring this up because I have people, whisper down the lane, and they hear community policing, so they're confusing it all together with Town Watch. And Town Watch never, ever, ever does the police work. We are their extra eyes and ears and we help them keep our community safe in that way that we report to the police. We work right out of the police station and we report right to them, and that's how it works. We never get out of our car. We do not. That's number one golden rule. And I can very proudly say that we have done 33 years with 4 very minimal problems with members. That was it. And not one incident of any kind that was, responsible for any kind of money or repairing something. We have been clean, and we want to do it to at least 50 years. Anyway, but I would really appreciate if, because a lot of people say to me, we don't even know that you exist. And so I guess because I'm hearing it enough that we'll get out there and we'll all get on your nerves then. But that's okay. But
So
if
Jean,
you could
is there,
all, pardon
Jean,
me?
is there who should the point of contact be? Could we have people that are interested in Town Watch contact the township first, and then have the township give you the information, or would you rather people contact you directly for volunteers? For people that,
If they contact the township, then you could pass it on to me.
okay, that would probably be a good
Do-
idea.
because,
so we'll have
every-
anyone interested in Town Watch could contact Bob Zinkowski, and he'll do the interviews. And, no, I'm kidding.
He's
but
writing me off right now.
We appreciate anyone that's interested in this cause, and I think it is a way to augment the police services.
Right.
And especially in a time of need, at this time, we certainly see a need for
But
it.
I really, really want to say that we never, ever get into policing itself. We don't get involved in anything. We report it, and that's it. And we fill out our papers. We're very organized, so that's what we're all about.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Gene.
Thanks for all you do. I guess that wraps up for me, the issue. I thought it was important just to bring these things to light and let the public know what's going on. So I guess I'll end with that. Thanks.
All right. The last item on public safety is a motion to authorize the sale of 2 used police vehicles. You have a memo from Lieutenant Antonini indicating that he would like authority to sell a 2006 Ford Crown Victoria, which has 129,000 miles on it, and a 1998 Chevrolet Tahoe, which is a crime scene processing vehicle, which has 112,000 miles on it. They've been replaced in the police fleet, so I would move the authorization.
Second?
Motion's moved and seconded. Any discussion with the commissioners? Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's it for public safety.
Personnel Administration, John.
All right, first up, we have Resolution 2010-49. It's a resolution for the collective bargaining agreement with the Delaware County Lodge, number 27 of the Fraternal Order of Police. In essence, this is a resolution to extend the terms of the existing contract with the police in Radnor Township from the contract was from 2007 through the end of 2010. And I'm going to pass over to Bob Zinkowski to have a brief discussion on this resolution so he can explain the merits of it.
Sure. What we've done I got here and met with the members of the Radnor Township Police Department, their bargaining unit, to work through the agreement here, looking at the various proposals, and able to work with the union, which I commend them for their efforts and their recognition of the township and the current situation that we are in, to get to this point to an extension for this period of time with a wage freeze for 2011, 3% increase in 2012, and 2.5% in 2013, which I believe is probably one of the lowest negotiated items in this particular area. And I commend the men and women of the department and of the township of recognizing that and coming to this resolution in front of the board this evening.
I'll move the approval of the resolution.
Second.
Bob, can you just offer a couple of key sort of talking points, bullet points as to why what's on the table is a good deal for us to take now?
Sure. I think given the circumstances with the potential retirement of some of the individuals within the department, given our staffing situation that currently is reduced, to be able to lose that type of experience in a very short period of time, a window of time here without the opportunity to have some of the tests in place to start to replace some of the staff. Also giving some of the issues that I think working through with the union here in regards to the long-term potentials here of this agreement, knowing that there are some challenges in looking at whether or not we take this to binding arbitration. Looking at the arbitration in my time being here, arbitration has not been friendly whatsoever, in my opinion, to townships. Knowing that until we right our financial situation here and working through and trying to hold things as tight as possible financially, there is a benefit, I think, in working with the union here and trying to work through this extension, but also trying to fix our costs and know what our anticipated costs are over this period of time. Are there items within a number of the contracts that we currently have that need to be addressed? Yes, there are. Are there issues in a multitude of agreements that we have around the entire township? But giving the window of time here, giving the potential loss of experienced officers and putting us even further shorthanded than what we currently sit at, and also coming up with an agreement that in this particular area has not seen to maintain these costs, I think is a fair deal for us. I don't think we're completely happy with it. I don't think the union is completely happy with it. So typically when you have two sides that are equally not thrilled with the end of the results, you've probably got a pretty good negotiated situation here.
Any further discussion by the board?
I'll just make a few comments. Bob has covered this topic very well. I think in general, I think this is probably a good thing for the township and the FOP. There's a lot of uncertainty in the economic future. I think this is a fair extension, and I just want to mention that if at any point during the next 3 years, if the FOP and the township agrees to re-enter discussion on this topic, if we're in full agreement to do that, we can do so. So this is an extension of the police contract. It's not the same as a regular contract. So it leaves room for discussion, and I think this is a good thing to have right now. I have to agree fully with Bob that with we have 7 senior officers that could retire, and if we were to have that situation come up, it would prove to be a hardship for the police officers and the township, because we would have a tough time backfilling those jobs right now. So I'm hoping that this extension will, build a relationship between the police force and the township, and instead of being heavy-handed, it's more of a gentleman's agreement. And I hope that we can continue that way, because we need to work together as a team, to weather this economic storm that we're in. So I appreciate the officers and the FOP, and I appreciate Bob Zinkowski's ability to work on this, because I think it's saved both sides a lot of costs and a lot of benefit.
Any further board comment? Any public comment?
Again, my name is Christina Peroni. One of the benefits or burdens of having institutional knowledge is that I have institutional knowledge. And as a result, I was around when Mr. Bayshore was caught, and some of the members of this board were caught in a situation where our benefits were changed by Mr. Bayshore. If I can just explain very briefly, and then I'll ask a pointed question about these negotiations for the benefit of the public. This is in accordance to our township Charter Administrative Code. It basically says that employees must take their vacations during the calendar year, and vacation time may not be carried over the year's end unless approved in writing by the manager. Such accumulation shall not exceed 2 weeks. So if you are carrying anything over, you cannot carry over more than 2 weeks. It's very clear. Mr. Bayshore sadly put forth a new version of the employee manual where he said you can take 2 weeks with his approval, carry over each year. So 2 weeks each year. It sounds like a subtle difference, but for those people who have been around a long time, this agreement that I have before me is something Radnor Township and all the residents paid for, created by Neil Morris, an attorney that I believe makes a good $300 an hour, which basically investigated this whole issue of carryover vacation time that was accumulated. This report, which you can see is extensive in addition to all of this, so you can imagine, I think we paid maybe $300,000 for this report, basically said that the township had accumulated $3.7 million by these illegal gains of money. And the recommendations in this, and I really don't know who negotiates on behalf of the township, but the page 1 summary recommendations are to stop the practice immediately, which the township did by resolution, and then when the rate benefit is up and when the police, that should be immediately changed as well. It's page 1, page 2, I won't bore you with the language, and page 3. It is 100% clear with all the backup documents. So with that in mind, I would ask, have we repealed those benefits that were in the original contract?
The police contract?
Right. The police had
The township doesn't have the ability to repeal those benefits in the police contract. What the township can do under Act 111 is negotiate those benefits, but there's no unilateral repeal under Pennsylvania labor law.
Okay, maybe my terminology is wrong, but it basically says that Dave Bayshore illegally basically gave these benefits to these employees without the authority, and so therefore, once the township became aware of it, which the official date was May 8th, 2009, that some commissioners found out about it and that the public found out about it, it was clearly written that this should be something that I'll read it to you if you want to, but it basically says that this is not, it doesn't belong to them. These should be immediately changed when it's time to renegotiate the new contract. So I hope these benefits were taken away because, you know, they weren't really appropriate and they weren't supposed to have them to begin with.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
may, the items which I think you may be referring to are items that were done outside the scope of the Board of Commissioners' approval, as well as possibly outside the contract. We will follow the contract and we will follow the charter.
Thank you, Christina, for your comments.
No, but I hear what you're saying, but it says...
Christina, it's not a debate. It's public comment.
Okay. Well, if any commissioner wants to know, it says it in this document.
No,
That's-
Christina, please.
No commissioner wants to know that
We know.
paid
We are
300
well aware of
Okay.
it, and we discussed it
But you
under
didn't
personnel.
discuss it in public, that this was something that you
Christina,
guys are knowingly
thank
saying
you
you're
for
okay
your
with.
comments.
Well, I will just respond.
No, John, you won't.
Wow.
All right.
It's remarkable, Mr. Nagel.
Yeah, point of order. No, as chair of the Personnel Committee, I will respond to this. I'm fully aware that in February 23rd, 2009, this board passed ordinance 2009-03, adjusting the personnel regulations, and then 2009-09 amends the employee handbook. However, these documents, these policies affect non-union employees. If we have a union contract in place, those union contracts are legal instruments and we don't have any right to change them unless we go into arbitration or open up the contract with the police in another way. So at this time, the board, if the board votes to approve this, we're voting to approve an extension of the existing contract with the existing terms. But I made it very clear early that at any point, if the board, the manager, and the officers want to enter into a negotiation at a later date, they can do so. And if that happens, those questions will come up. But right now, we're not doing that.
Just, I think the confusion is there's three categories of employees. You have police, covered by this contract that's being extended. You have the rate employees covered by a separate labor contract. And then you have everyone else, which is these two gentlemen and everyone that's on the second floor. And that they're the benefits that the former manager for that group of employees extended, that was not clearly in the handbook, was not clearly in administrative code. That's what that resolution in February 2009 addressed. Those other benefits are already in those labor agreements. They can't be unilaterally taken out by fiat or by ordinance, they have to be negotiated. So it doesn't really affect what's happening tonight. Those benefits are going to continue for 3 more years at the wage increases that are before the board tonight on the collective bargaining agreement, but they're subject to be negotiated at any time. Between now and the end of this contract, or at the end of this contract, there'll be issues that'll arise again. And the same with the rate contract. That resolution didn't affect the rate contract either.
Call the question.
Call the question.
Bob, will you have the ability to manage the use of vacation time?
Is part of the agreement is how this goes forward, and I believe even in part of that resolution there that a lot of this now, not only the approval of the manager, but brought in front of the Board of Commissioners, I do believe was part of that. So it'll be made aware to the board of those issues. But I think the issues that Christina was probably bringing up were a lot of other issues that tied, and as John Rice had pointed out, a lot of other items that were interpreted that were taken outside of the scope of the agreement, and that there were things even within there that might have been outside the scope of those particular areas.
But I recognize that, in any negotiation, you're not going to, what we would consider the ideal outcome, we're not going to get, and just like these gentlemen back here would consider the ideal outcome, they're not going to get. It's the nature of compromise and negotiation. But I want to make sure that to the extent possible, that future liability associated with the accumulated leave time and vacation does not, balloon out of control. And I am expecting you, appropriately in conjunction with AJ for now and whoever is out there in the future, to make sure that we're managing that. I think what we've got here is an issue of trade-offs. What you've advised us in your answers tonight is, there's a big risk of not coming to a negotiated settlement and going to arbitration. And that's probably not a risk that we want to take in the current environment. But that doesn't mean we can't manage under this existing agreement. And that's just something I want you to make sure you got your hands on.
I think also as part of that, what we'll do and work with Mr. White too is be able to, at the budget time of each year, to be able to provide you with a list of those particular items of vacation time and what balances may be. But also as part of it, we have a problem with just on how vacation is accrued and how that's handled towards the end of the year. And I think that's where a lot of these issues came up, where staff were at the end of December because they were accruing it by month, which then they don't have the opportunities for some of those until December. So then you're right against the wall. But I think one of the things we'll be proposing is some changes to how that is working, but also too for the board to be able to see what those balances are, particular to individuals, and then see what's taking place. So I agree with you, Kevin. It's about managing those particular items.
Vote's been called. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Before we, are you guys just here because you want to see the outcome, or does somebody want to make a comment?
They had opportunity to make comments.
I'm curious. I was just okay.
Don't worry, they would have been up here.
We appreciate you coming out and being here for the meeting.
I think it's important that we recognize, particularly in the first year of this extension, that you aren't getting an increase in salary. I think it's a recognition on your part that we are in financial times, struggling times. We appreciate you're willing to help us out. Thank you, gentlemen.
And
And you're-
also for the willingness to stand up to the bigger FOP. I know that you got a lot of pressure from them.
And you're now experts on the Bryn Mawr Fire Company floor. So go out forth and tell the community all about
If you have
it.
any friends that are steel workers, we got a project. Thank you.
for your service.
Were there any opposed? People jump too fast.
Thank you for your service.
My last item on personnel administration is a motion to approve the Callaway retirement agreement. This was covered in executive session under personnel because it pertains to an individual. The board has discussed this topic with the solicitor, and I believe at this point I'll motion to accept this agreement.
Second?
Moved and second. Any further discussion by the board?
I want to remind the board member not to discuss, I don't believe, John Rice, are we allowed to discuss details of this agreement or not?
Well, yeah, the agreement itself's a public record.
Okay.
So that's why it's on your agenda to be approved. I mean, it settles basically a heart and lung claim and officers' retirement. The pension's been calculated. That's part of this agreement, and it's attached to it. So this is something that's been lingering about for the past 8 or 9 months. It's up for the board's approval tonight and for execution. There was also a claim that the township would get reimbursed back from workers' compensation. We expect to get about $35,000 or $38,000 back on funds that have been paid out under the Heart and Lung Act. That's not in this agreement, but that's just for the board's benefit.
Okay, thank you.
Any public discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No further report.
Thank you. Community Development, Commissioner Curley.
First item is a HARB recommendation, certificate of appropriateness. I move the approval of HARB 2000-10-07.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Further discussion by the board? Any discussion? Public? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Next item involves a potential change to the Saldo code, and what I want to refer this to planning, not introduce it, so there's no problem with that. And I do want to, so I motion that we refer this item to planning for planning to give us an opinion before we introduce it formally.
You don't want to introduce it and refer it, you just want to refer
No,
it?
I want them to come back and say that eventually it has to go to planning. If they went back and told us they wanted it differently, it would have to come back to us and then start the whole process again. So I just want them to tell us their opinion on it and then send it back to us. When we have a final document that both sides agree, then we'll introduce it formally.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to.
Well, don't we always introduce it and then they look at it? I mean.
Yeah, but then we also send it to Delaware County, and then it comes to us in a.
You can do it either way, Bill. I mean, there's a draft that came out of the last meeting, which Don and I have made some revisions to make it clearer. So I think at this point, it's not in a final form to be introduced formally. That starts a process where you then have to advertise it, and I think if the board's okay with the concept, it can be sent back to the Planning Commission for them to work on this.
And we have to vote on that, or can we just send this back to them and say, look at this and get back to your recommendation?
I mean, we had
Well,
a subcommittee recommendation.
We have to agree on the content of this to
Yes.
send to
Right.
planning.
And the subcommittee wanted the board to consider this. So-
I've looked it over. I appreciate, it looks like items 5, 6, and 7 were added. This addressed my concern that if we had a property owner consolidating more than 2 lots, that they would not be able to just do this administratively. And the idea here is that if you want to, according to this document, if someone is, if a landowner who owns, I'll say 4 or more contiguous lots, were to come to the township and want to consolidate those lots, they would not be able to do that when it's more than 4. Is that correct?
You would not be able to do it administratively.
Administratively, they would have to
through
go
a
to the
public process.
planning commission.
Yes.
Yep. Because that falls under land development. Now, my concern is with the number 4. I think I would be more comfortable if the number was, if it stated more than 2 parcels. Again, my issue here is trying to protect the character of neighborhoods, and when you have more than 2 lots consolidated, it generally ends up being a different type of construction, a different type of house, a different scale, and it really attacks the scope and scale of and the character of a neighborhood. So,
John, isn't that the kind of thing that we're hoping planning will take up?
We're not introducing it, so.
well,
they're gonna look at it, yeah.
I think we can give them direction as well, and I'm just putting it out there that I think this number should be 2.
Let me do this, John. Let me get a second for referring it to planning, and then you make it that amendment, because I'll support reducing it also. So is there a second to?
I'll
refer
second
to
it.
Planning?
Moved and seconded. Further
All
discussion.
right, and then two changes that I would like. Number 5, I would also like that initial draft put down from 4 parcels to whether it's 3 or 2 parcels. I'd be more comfortable with 3 than 2, but I'd like that. And then John Rice, part of it was a conversation with him that better captured what the subcommittee wanted to do. So he gave us some language that, so he would change 6 and 7 to read this way. The administrative, actually 5, 6, and 7 to read this way. This administrative review exemption shall not apply in the following circumstances. A, when more than 3 parcels are involved in the consolidation, that number could be 2 or 4. And then B, when the area of the proposed consolidated parcel exceeds twice the minimum lot size of the zoning district, and there is a change in use or an expansion of an existing commercial or industrial building. So it better captures the spirit, in my opinion, it better captures the spirit. 6 and 7 were my attempt to capture the spirit of the subcommittee, but I believe that John Rice's language captures it better. So what I would like to do is send this to planning with the changes that John Rice identified, and then board discussion on whether that number should be 3, 4, or 2, or some other number. So I'll motion the changes that John Rice identified with 3 parcels involved in the consolidation.
I'll second that.
Let me just.
Well, hang on.
Let me just comment on what Don and I had a discussion last week about the number of parcels. The way this was, the 5, 6, and 7 seemed to me to be sort of a duplication. The idea was to try to avoid a situation where you had multiple parcels, whether they had buildings on them or not. If they had buildings, they could be knocked down and something could be consolidated, and you would have something massive there. So the first part, of whether it's 2, 3, or 4 parcels, that would be the first exemption to the exemption. And then the second would be when the minimum lot size, when the parcels, the proposed consolidation exceeded 2 times the minimum lot size, and there was a change of use of a existing commercial or industrial building. So it would pick up a situation where you had a commercial or industrial building and somebody was trying to add to that with vacant land or knocking down a building and add to that and then expand that substantially. So it would pick that up. That would have to come through the process. The exemption would not apply. But remember, you're only referring this to the Planning Commission.
I know.
So they may totally disagree with what I suggested to Don, and ultimately it's going to come back to you in some form, and at that point it'll be introduced.
All right, should I call the vote?
Any public comment? Baron, could I just remind you, though, that All we're
understand.
doing is sending this off to planning.
Understand it. Actually, and one of the first things I want to concentrate on too is if we're sending it off to planning, if we're including the administrative cover page that was on from the last meeting, because that's obviously going to influence them, the goal of this.
Yes.
And there's two things about the way it read now, or at least as of the 22nd. The goal of the amendment is to reduce the likelihood that a large number of small lots could be consolidated into a small number of large lots without subdivision plan approval. And again, since this is going to be what they should be guided by in determining whether these are correct or not, or what's most appropriate, two things that I think are kind of missing from there. The first one is not to be overlooked, something that I think we've already agreed upon, which is not to create split zone parcels, which is one of the underlying things in there. So I think that should actually be one of the goals. And secondly, I'm not sure that the way that was stated, small number into.
Yeah, may I take it, because I, another stat, because I listened to that, so would this be consistent with how?
Okay.
Reduce the likelihood that something out of character consistent with the existing conditions can occur without the public land development process?
I would, that would capture the spirit of the second one, perhaps with the word scale in it,
Yes.
because that's really
and
what
then
it.
the other item is ensure language is consistent with township intent regarding zoning classification. So I recognize that this memo page doesn't reflect what, and I wasn't planning on changing it here, but just doing it at the staff level. But the spirit of those two things, is that?
I think so, yes, and
Very good.
that's one of the more important things, because obviously, if they're going to change the underlying
So
ordinance.
no one
then
has
you-
an issue with me directing staff to modify that or asking Bob Ziankowski to modify it?
Thank you. And now, I understand this is just recommendations. I want to just get a feel for a couple of the items here that Don had talked about with the amendment. In terms of administrative with consolidating the parcels, and I'm assuming if you don't fall within this exception to the exception or whatever, so you can just do it, that's probably a fairly short-term process, couple weeks, month or whatever. And given, and I've discussed this with Don, given there's no time limit on that, what would prevent someone from just circumventing this and doing 3 lots, 2 lots, combine those, 2 lots, combine those? Developers have 6 months when they're going through things. That would not be a big burden for them. So that was one of the issues I had without putting a particular time limit on that, or at parcels that exist at a certain time. So I just would ask that be conveyed too, so that the planning doesn't take this as is and think that this would be adequate without circumvention. The second comment I'd like to bring up is on the second part that Don read, which was twice the minimum lot size, which I like that number. We talked about minimum lot size in the subcommittee meeting. I'm not sure in terms of, again, the timing, because someone could consolidate it, say they're not changing a use, and then come back 6 months or a year later, and then expand without having to go through the subdivision process just to combine the lots. And secondly, it's just as important residential, especially in particular like R5 districts, where somebody could join a bunch of them, and that would be circumvented by making it the use or the expansion of commercial industrial. So I just want to make sure that planning, I respect them and I want them to be able to make decisions, but I want to make sure they're not unduly biased or think that there's another reason for some of these things. Or if there is another reason, I'd like to hear it so I know when we go to planning.
Well, the good news is you'll be at planning to tell them.
Yes, but they'll take a lot of credence in this, because Don, to his credit, has spent a lot of time shepherding this through and put this, so I want to make sure that it gets.
I mean, the memo is sufficiently open, tells them to evaluate, select, modify, include an explanation, so I think they can advise us accordingly.
Okay, and as long as the goals don't specifically mention commercial versus residential.
No, I
then
think
that
the
would-
goals will mention what.
I mean, so that's a plus there to
Very
help
good.
them guide that then.
Okay.
So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next item is a motion to authorize RFPs for professional firms for land and planning services. Mr. Ziankowski, a brief explanation.
Sure, I think this arose out of the last meeting in regards to Resolution 2010-51 later in the meeting rescinding Resolution 2010-28. So this would be an opportunity to look and go out and get proposals from firms that could assist along this process.
Very well, I motion the authorization.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the board?
Well, I just want to clarify what this is, because it's a little worded a little obtusely. This would be a firm or some professional outfit that would assist our planning commission that in reviewing our ordinances, with the project that we have been trying to get moving forward for some time now. Right? Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think what this came out of was the fact that originally the Planning Commission was looking for help because they had a lot on their plate. That resulted in what eventually became the ORAC, the Ordinance Review Advisory Committee, which we essentially shut down last meeting and now are poised to rescind it by item number N, Resolution 2010-51. In recognition of the fact that the Planning Commission is still overloaded, we felt the need to engage the services of a professional outfit that deals with these kinds of ordinances all the time to assist them with samples, suggestions, that sort of thing. And the motion is not to award any bids, it's simply to put an RFP together, submit it to appropriate land use and planning consultants, and see where that goes. But I think we are at the point where we need to get some professional help on these things, not simply for the plan institutional, but for other ordinances as well.
Agreed. And as part of that RFP or part of the services we would be looking for from them, getting feedback from the stakeholders who were interested in participating in the process before will be part of the process.
I assume.
Okay, so I don't recall if it was seconded. Did someone second the motion?
Second, yes, it was second.
All right, public comment? Further board discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Very well, the ayes have it. The next item is Resolution 20-1043 for a lot line change on Orchard Way. I'll motion the I'll motion the resolution.
Second? And I have, Dan, this was on my agenda. He gave me the affidavits that they've signed to agree to all the conditions in the resolution.
Very good. Okay, so any further board discussion? Any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Aye also, I did not. The next item is a discussion item for a shade tree.
Wait, no, we got another resolution.
Very well. 2010-44. I'll motion the introduction, or I'll motion the resolution.
Approval, I'll second it, and again, we have their signed affidavits, they agree to conditions.
Public comment, or rather, board comment, public comment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed. The next item is a discussion of shade tree woodland protection. So a little bit of background. I held a community development subcommittee meeting. One of the items on the subcommittee meeting was to address some shade tree issues. And we came out with the subcommittee came out with 4 recommendations. And these are in the draft resolution that was in your packet. This is the one, item 1, identify ways to address issues with small trees versus large trees and the replacement of large trees when large trees are taken down. A second issue was identify the ways to increase the use of large trees in parking areas. A third issue was to evaluate the current definition of a heritage tree and determine if that definition is adequate. And the fourth was to investigate if we were using our enforcement powers correctly in the protection of our shade trees. So Commissioner Schaefer has some interest in expanding the scope of that beyond the scope that was identified by the subcommittee. So we speak briefly to that.
First of all, I want to just start out by saying all 4 of those items that were just delineated are completely legitimate and important items that I support wholly moving forward on. However, it's my opinion and the opinion of others that we need to take more of a comprehensive and holistic look at the shortcomings that we have in our regulatory scheme that as it affects our shade trees and our tree canopy. The basic issue here is the very steady depletion of our tree canopy in Radnor and the negative effects that it has on our community. This is an issue that means a lot to me. It has come up again and again at our boards, and it's in our comprehensive plan as an issue we need to address. So with all of that in mind, last spring, I sat down after I got elected with some people from the Shade Tree Commission, with staff, and people from some other boards, and we started brainstorming about, what is the current regulatory scheme? Is it good enough? Can we make changes? Can we improve it? We met twice, and indeed we found, yes, there are a lot of shortcomings in our current regulatory scheme. It deserves a very thorough investigation and research. However, recognizing that we wanted this to be public and open and legitimate, we decided it would be important to get a formal charge from the Board of Commissioners and have a formal sanction of this work. To that end, we went to the subcommittee of the community development, and what came out of that was something short of, we had been seeking basically a charge to continue this research, and we got 4 very important but very specific things to fix, which all need to be fixed, but they are certainly by no means the universe of issues that need to be addressed surrounding our protecting our shade trees and protecting our canopy. So that brings us to today, and I am suggesting that we indeed go ahead and charge Shade Tree Commission with the 4 items that came out of that group. But in addition to that, we charge them with the more comprehensive analysis of the whole regulatory scheme that controls these, and charge them with coming up with solutions and recommendations that would address all of the shortcomings, not just those 4 issues. I think it would be inefficient to just address 4 issues that pop right out and then later come back and address others. If we're going to amend this ordinance, we should amend it in one fell swoop after a thorough investigation. And frankly, I don't really see a downside in charging our Shade Tree Commission, who's the most likely board to do it, to do this research, to come up with, and they're willing to do it. There is a capacity issue in that it's basically just 3 guys, but they or the chairperson is up for it and feels comfortable that he can get the input he needs from other boards and from others, volunteers, all free, and feels confident that he can do a good, thorough analysis, and then come back to this board with a comprehensive menu of things that we can do to change our current ordinance, also potentially look at other ordinances that might also address some of these issues, and perhaps come up with some other ways to address the issues we have through education or outreach or whatnot. So what I am asking is that we pass a resolution, which we can move on tonight or we can wait 2 weeks, it's either way is fine, that would incorporate what came out of the Community Development Subcommittee, but would also sanction a larger charge to look at the entire statute and include the many important issues that weren't included in that charge.
Can I ask a point of clarification? Under your definition of what the charge is, wouldn't those 4 points sort of be a subset of that?
Yes. So I mean, tell me if you think I'm incorrect, but substantively, the difference is I didn't look at a woodland protection ordinance, and part of the reason is, to me, that's hugely complex and a subject in and of itself. And to me, I think it's better to get these 4 done and do a woodland protection ordinance later. And then furthermore, these 4 items, I'm coming to you as a board, and I'm saying that we went through a public process, and the public process said these 4 items are important enough for action on the board, but we haven't done that with the woodland protection ordinance. So in my opinion, it's premature It doesn't mean we never do it. It's just premature to include that item. I also think it's premature to look at amendments when we're not yet sure what the problems are or if we have problems. So it was the intention of item D to be a little bit more broad than simply enforcement. Perhaps we just, widen enforcement and tell them to identify what some of the problems are. But before we start going down evaluating potential solutions, to me, they should come back to us and say, these are what we think the problems are, because we might not see them as problematic and might not want them to explore solutions to it.
I don't have a strong opinion one way or another about it, but I personally did have the opportunity to work with those, I assume it's the same three fellows, Howard, Bill, and Jim. They're outstanding individuals, and it would seem to me, if we can manage the agenda so that Howard doesn't have to sit here half the night, if maybe we could have a discussion as to Howard's view of, what are we asking him to do and take on?
I don't think Howard's uncomfortable taking on any of these.
Well, I mean, we've had extended discussion. We've been working on this since last spring. So he's well aware of the effort that's underway. I mean, he's leading it.
But is he comfortable with taking it on as an overall thing versus Don's suggestion of a subset? Or is he talking, does Howard think the process should be bifurcated?
He agrees that there is some low-hanging fruit, that easy things you can pinpoint right away, and those have been captured in these 4 things. There are many more shortcomings in the statute. In fact, the day after that subcommittee meeting, we talked, and he said, well, we didn't address this, this, and this. And that's the whole point. We haven't had that. The group, Howard and his group, were in their infancy of doing this research, infancy of identifying what the shortcomings are. These 4 things are definitely shortcomings. There are others. I mean, I can go into specifically what some of those are, but it's really getting into the weeds.
These 4 were the 4 that we had a factual basis to proceed on. So the way I see it is just, I'll make a motion for the next meeting to include the items on 1, and then Elaine, if you offer an amendment for 2, and we'll just see how it goes from there. Does that seem reasonable to you?
To move to
add, what is it, on the motion, the draft motion here? Item 1 is what came out of the subcommittee.
Right.
Item 2 is what you believe should be added.
Right.
So I'll make a motion for item 1. And then you ask for an amendment for the second item, and we'll vote on the second item.
That's fine.
Sound reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I motion that staff develop a resolution for next meeting that has the items number 1 from the draft resolution that we have before us.
Second.
Amendments?
Moved and seconded. Are there any amendments offered?
I don't understand what you're moving. You're moving to introduce this at the next meeting or tonight?
Yes, so that it comes back in one document that we can look at.
It is in one document that we can look at.
Well, it's this discussion tonight. We're not approving anything.
Right.
Yes, and that's part of it, too.
Right, so
He's making a motion to have it on the agenda next month to vote on. We're not voting tonight.
okay,
It's
and
discussion.
I would amend that so that the resolution that comes before us next month, or next meeting, would include Section 1 and Section 2 of the current resolution that's in front of us.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion by the board? Any public discussion? All in favor?
So just voting on
We're
the
just voting on
hold
the
on,
motion,
hold on.
John. The amendment.
This is the amendment.
Yeah. We're not voting on the whole motion.
No,
vote.
this is just
Okay,
the
all right,
amendment.
we'll say that.
It says discussion, is that problem? I mean, that's what, I came tonight with the intention of proceeding the way I'm proceeding,
Yeah.
because it says.
Right, I mean, since it says discussion, I think and it's fine, we can wait 2 weeks to
Mhm.
pass this. There's no, extraordinary rush. I don't think we should go ahead and pass it tonight.
We're not
because-
passing it. All we're doing is we're recommending what goes on the agenda next month. So we're not passing anything. We're just giving a sense of what we want developed by the staff for to vote on next month.
Bob, can you do me a favor and just reach out to Howard and see if he can be at the meeting? Or if he can't be, just let him know I'd like to talk to him.
Sure.
Thanks.
So we have the amended motion in front of us. Any comments on the full motion as amended?
It isn't amended yet.
We just voted to,
No, we didn't.
to approve the amendment.
I don't think so.
This hasn't had the vote yet.
You got discussion, you call for
I
a
second
second,
the
that's all.
amendment.
Yeah, all you got is a second, you're waiting for,
So
you
we
now
didn't vote on it.
discussion.
Okay. Play that tape back, Jim. Any further board comments? Any public discussion on this matter?
Yes, Dan Sherry, Wayne, and there was no vote on the amendment one way or the other.
Oh, thank you for that.
I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure the record was clear. Commissioner Nagel, given the issues you've had with meeting minutes, I would think that you would appreciate that. With respect to this discussion and what apparently is going on the agenda for another meeting with respect to the shade tree woodland protection, that meeting, which Commissioner Curley presided over, was televised. I was very happy to see that. I am concerned, though, with respect to what will actually be drafted by the staff with this amendment in place. It sounds like you're only going to be getting one specific proposed resolution or ordinance with what 4 issues you're looking for, Commissioner Curley, on it, as well as additional issues by Commissioner Schaefer. I think that's unwieldy. Perhaps it would be better clarified if 2 resolutions were drafted, one with just the 4 and the other with whatever it is Commissioner Schaefer is talking about. Commissioner Schaefer's comments tonight about what she would like to see on that proposed resolution or ordinance, whatever it may be, I had a very difficult time objectively understanding. I hear things about regulating tree canopies and as what's stated on the agenda here, woodland protection. It sounds to me, just based on what Commissioner Schaefer was attempting to say, that this board might be looking at something that seems very analogous to what the Radnor Conservancy has been attempting to do in Radnor Township for the past couple of years, which is putting forth easements, not governmental easements, but easements that property owners can voluntarily participate in. So I think in order to maintain a clear record and give the public the ability to differentiate that which your subcommittee proposed and that which Commissioner Schaefer appears to be proposing, that you have 2 resolutions. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Chip Layfield, Wayne. 2 points. One, I was hopeful at that meeting there was some discussion about the idea of putting some money, retaining some money from developers that are developing around heritage trees, so that there would be a way that they could be replaced should they die, as has happened on Moshe Lane and other areas in the township. It seems like that ends up with homeowners getting $25,000 bills to have trees taken down because proper tree protection wasn't put in place. I know it's a thorny issue because you have to hold the money for 5 to 10 years, and how that would happen, I don't know, but I would really encourage the Shade Tree Commission, with the direction of this board, to look at that issue.
I hope that's, it's my intention that that's included in item D, investigate the township using its enforcement powers, because, tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the capability to do that is in the existing ordinance. Whether we're using it or not remains to be seen, and that's what...
I don't think it is, because it goes for a period farther out. It goes out for 5 years or 10 years when these big heritage trees finally die and they have to be taken down as a hazard. So
Mechanism for going forward and monitoring this action and the escrow mechanism is one of the many items that this shade tree would be considering if we gave them a larger charge.
I believe it, no, I think it would be included in the smaller charter, at least under item D, using the current enforcement power. That's part of the enforcement power. That's the way I would take it. So it was my intention, and it didn't occur to me that it wouldn't be included until you said that it was possible.
I didn't.
Well, actually, the current ordinance says shall, not may. It says may, not shall. And that was one of the things they were discussing, is whether that would be appropriate to make the escrow obligatory, as it's not really used.
And maybe there's like an insurance policy or something that the developer could buy into, or in some way, so their money's not tied up, because it's a lot of money that'd have to be tied up
Yes.
for length of
And
time.
plus, you're talking about duration where you probably have a difficult time associating cause and effect.
I don't know. That's why, that's what I, did send that to the Shade Tree Commission to
Yeah,
look
I
to.
still think that's included in item D.
Okay.
But
Well, I've seen it
others may not,
firsthand,
but to
the-
me,
the-
that's included. It was clearly discussed at our subcommittee meeting, and it was my intention to have that included in item D. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be included.
Because otherwise, the homeowner has to try to
Yes.
sue the builder, and then,
Yes.
which has happened, and on and on. The other thing I wanted to point out that coincidentally, I guess the Democratic Committee passed this resolution about televising meetings, and Commissioner Schaefer's talking about a subcommittee that I wasn't aware that this board had authorized, and everyone's paraphrasing what was said. Kevin's asking, it's back and forth. I didn't see that meeting televised, and I wasn't sure that that committee was in fact authorized by the board. Thank you.
Any further public comment? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Opposed?
opposed?
Now, that's just the amendment. Opposed. Now for the main motion.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
if I may, would it be easier to have two different pieces of legislation? Because I think right now you've got
I would
some items
prefer
that are in, some aren't, because I think they both complement each other. But if you have two items that are commingled, what if the board decides, well, we like this part, but we don't like this part, then you're amending it this way. You have both pieces that either one can be amended, but you have two
I don't think it
issues
really
that you
makes a
can have.
difference.
No, I mean,
don't
this board
see-
will come back to us with their
Yeah.
recommendations
Right. I
mean,
regardless
on
of
this
that.
I
physical
actually
piece
like
of-
the suggestion, given the confusion about wording, I actually like the suggestion of having the two different drafts.
Well, to me, it's not necessary. To me, you're
Yeah.
just choosing between two alternatives, and we just select one tonight and direct Shade Tree accordingly. So that's the way I would proceed. I mean, we've had motions and we've had them seconded.
Yeah, I mean,
My
it's neither
opinion,
here
we
nor
should
there.
proceed.
It's, the substance is the same.
Mr. Rice, you have a quizzical look. Did you want to comment?
I'm just sitting here a little confused as to what the original motion, I think, Don, is what you are including in that resolution.
Yes,
But are you also establishing a group?
no. It
Okay.
says to
Shade
task
tree.
the Shade Tree.
Okay.
So
It's just Shade Tree. Both motions are
Yeah.
just for
Just
Shade
Shade
Tree.
Tree.
Item
Okay.
one, in this draft document that we have before us, resolution number, it has no number on it. Item one is essentially what came out of the subcommittee. Item two is the additions to the subcommittee that Elaine has recommended, and
And those amendments were not passed
not by the subcommittee,
by this board?
by any board. Neither
Okay.
amendment was passed by this board.
Okay.
Because item one was a recommendation from the subcommittee. So the question before us is, should we augment the subcommittee recommendation with item two? We had a vote on that, which passed, correct? And now we should vote on the main
Okay.
motion.
Thank you.
And you oppose the amendment?
Yeah, because it didn't come out of the subcommittee, it just came out of the air, and, you know,
Yes.
we should have the subcommittee should approve it, or it should go back to the subcommittee, and they should discuss it and make a recommendation to us, not
But
just,
we already lost, so
Okay.
let's move on.
yeah, no, I'm just,
Yeah.
he asked me to explain my vote, I'm telling
Very
him.
good.
This is,
We
now
need to
it's
vote
on the
on the
whole
main
thing.
motion.
Main motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I tell you, that was harder work than imagined, sorry about that.
Took longer than the subcommittee.
Yeah. I don't know if there's something wrong, but there's logic to it in my head, but it didn't appear that way, so.
See, my position is you just make the motion second and we vote, you know, all this discussion.
Okay, the next item is a discussion of a recommendation from the Open Space Committee updating the 1991 Parks and Open Space Policy. Mr. Ziankowski, give us a briefing on that.
Sorry, this came out of the Open Space Committee where looking at updating this, and the real push on this is that in going for grants and other funding sources, with the plan being so far outdated, a lot of these grant funding agencies are looking at a more recent plan, which it would hamper any future applications for funding a particular open space or park development items.
So who does this work and how does it get paid for?
Do you want me Well, we had an open space meeting last week, a public meeting, and all the commissioners got a PowerPoint presentation where this committee did all that research. It's also on the web if anybody would like to look at it. That particular presentation, addressed why we would do this, how our neighbors have done this, how much it costs, who does the work. The long and short of it is the work takes about 12 to 18 months, couldn't cost anywhere between $40,000 and $80,000, although most of that is covered by grants. The open space plan that would be proposed now is a comprehensive plan that would also address parks, trails, stormwater management, et cetera, much more complex than plans from the 90s because open space preservation has become more complex. Also, this plan would become a chapter in our new comp plan because we're supposed to be doing a new comp plan 2013. Every 10 years you're supposed to do one. So this would become the chapter of that, get us a head start in getting that together. They made a formal recommendation to this board to get started on their work, and I can describe to you what the first steps they would take. They were looking for approval for their first 3 to 6 months of their game plan. And that was specifically to have a research subcommittee of the Open Space Committee that would continue investigation efforts to find funding sources and write grants for these funds. To the Board of Commissioners, should we begin to consider whether we might use open space monies to fund the portion of the cost of the new plan that is not covered by grants. Number 3, we should identify, or this group would identify ordinances which impact open space. Number 4, this group would update the open space inventory and weigh each parcel for its benefit to current standards, such as stormwater management and accessibility. And then finally, this group would prepare a preliminary list of topics to be addressed in the open space plan. That's the work that they would like a sanction for to do months 3 to 6. None of that work costs any money. And then at month 6, when this portion is done, they would come back, have a public meeting, and discuss the next steps.
So the first 6 months of the effort is free.
Yes. So I guess it would behoove us to go ahead and get a sense of whether to approve this or
Well, we'll put it on the agenda for next
put it
month
on
to
the
approve
agenda
it.
for next. Do we need a formal resolution for it, John Rice?
All those in favor of putting it on
No.
the next agenda, say aye. Aye.
Do we need a formal resolution?
I would
Okay.
adopt this by resolution. I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I haven't seen what's proposed, but if it's a recommendation
Yeah.
involving expenditure of funds and updating the plan, I'd do it by resolution.
Okay.
Let's be careful. My understanding is that there's no expenditure of funds.
For the first 6 months, then they come back to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
John
Well,
specifically said expenditure of.
I heard some money, but since I haven't seen it, I don't know exactly.
No money in the
what's
first 6 months, but
Okay.
eventually, yes, money would be involved.
Right.
So better to be safe and just have a resolution.
Yep.
And we're only authorizing the first 6 months.
Does that make sense to you, Bob?
We're authorizing this committee to go out and work on updating the open space committee. When they want more money, they're going to have to come make a presentation to us.
Yeah, but again, I wanted to get Bob's reaction because we're sort of asking them to do half a job.
No, for the first 6 months, there's no expenditure, so we're just taking to the point, and I think what Commissioner Spengler just spoke about, that at the point where they need to start expending money, they'll come back before the board and make a presentation.
Yep.
The next item is Resolution 2010-51, rescinding Resolution 2010-28, which had established an Ordinance Review Advisory Committee. So I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further board discussion. Any public discussion?
Good evening. Dan Sherry, Wayne. This Ordinance Review Advisory Committee, and I have the proposed resolution tonight. Could somebody please tell me when this committee was first actually authorized by the board to do anything?
I believe it was in July of this year,
Okay.
as I recall. Do you have the date on the 2210-28 ordinance, Dan?
And I don't mean to parse words, but I don't think they've been authorized to do anything at all because we haven't appointed anyone.
We
to it,
simply
correct?
organized it, we simply authorized this organization, and we
Yes.
were in the process of interviewing individuals, and we decided to rescind it.
Okay, I recollect that, and I see with 10/28, the 28th potentially being the 28th week of the year. One of the reasons why I ask is that in the past week, an email has been posted online that appeared to relate to a committee that seemed to have very similar parameters to this one that was rescinded, and according to Commissioner Mahoney, never authorized to do anything, having multiple meetings in somebody's dining room.
Dan, what bearing does that have on the resolution before us?
Well, if you're voting to rescind a committee, I would
No,
just
we're
like
voting
some-
to rescind a resolution.
Okay, so the committee never actually met?
Nope, never was appointed.
Not officially, I just heard from Commissioner
No,
Fisher.
no, we
Commissioner
had a
Fisher, could you, excuse me, Commissioner Fisher, would you mind elaborating on that comment?
Just saying, this board hasn't authorized the committee to meet. We haven't appointed anyone to the committee, so as far as I'm concerned, they haven't officially met.
Okay, well, does anybody on this board have any information as to whether or not a committee that sounds awfully like this one collaborated in the last several months?
And I'll ask you again, what does that have to do with this resolution, Mr. Sherry?
Well, I think it's very important, Commissioner Nagel, that if committees convene, they convene subsequent to being duly authorized by this
And what
board.
does that have to do with this resolution, Mr. Sherry? You're not
As I
making a
indicated a
point.
couple minutes ago,
No,
there
you're
were some
bringing up
emails
old
that were-
wash. Please.
I didn't
The
catch that.
comments
What did I
are
bring up?
about the resolution in front of us.
Well, I'll quote from an email then that was posted online.
I
because it-
don't, I know what the email says, Dan.
What's the email say, Commissioner Nagel?
I'm not, somebody wants it, they can go look it up. What does it have to do with the resolution before us, which is to rescind a previous resolution?
Commissioner Nagel, are you asserting that that email does not relate to this particular committee?
Yes.
That's a wholly different committee?
Dan, what does it have to do with this resolution?
I would just renew my question as to whether or not anybody, I see you gesturing, Commissioner Curley.
So there was a group that formed without a sanction from the Board of Commissioners. And there is difference of opinion on why it formed and who is at fault. And I think we had a long, open discussion about that. And it was determined that we should have a formal charge for this committee to meet. So we passed the ordinance or the resolution to create the charge. We never formed the committee, and now we're rescinding.
I appreciate that. What I would like, though, is some clarification as to who, if any, members on this board gave direction to that committee that's referenced in the email. This committee that sounds a lot like this and was meeting in dining rooms.
I mean, I can't see the email, so I can't, I don't know if this is.
Was that the
time for it.
implementation committee you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think we already had this
Yeah.
discussion.
We're going to refer this to the planning commission. No one's going to review ordinances other than our planning commission, so.
Okay. Does this board have a set policy that committees should be expressly authorized before they convene?
Committees of the Board of Commissioners.
So any committee that convenes without a charge from the board
Yeah.
is irrelevant from the township perspective. So we would have no authority to stop a group from forming. That group just doesn't have any formal township charge unless it's commissioned by the Board of Commissioners.
I appreciate that distinction. If it is brought to the attention of this board that a committee is meeting, does this board as a policy take action to prevent that from occurring?
No, the Democratic Committee can meet and make any
No.
resolutions they want.
Talking about board committees. Don't confuse
There's
a
no
really
board
simple
committees.
issue.
There's no board committees that can meet without our sanction.
I think he's accurate. I mean, if a group of citizens come together and calls themselves a committee, we have no authority to stop them, nor should we try. But if a group came together and tried to assume some formal charge, then I think you would have a universal, I think the board would join together to stop that.
Okay, well, since you haven't read the email, I have it here, and I can read it verbatim to you, if you would like. This is an email that was...
nothing to do with the resolution in front of us. Will you please?
Well, Commissioner Curley said he hadn't read the email, so I think it's important for the record, and I can...
No.
I'm sure you appreciate the importance of a clear record, given what happened with the trash ordinance.
Dan, stop with your spurious charges. Either speak to this or sit down because you're out of order.
What did I say that was out of order? This is an
You're not
email-
speaking about this resolution in front of us tonight, which is to rescind a previous resolution. So do you have any comments about why we should or should not rescind that previous resolution?
I'm responding directly to a question from Commissioner
You wanna
Curley,
withdraw
who
your
indicated
question?
that he had not read an email. This is an email that was posted on the city
And I
of
don't think you
Ardmore
were asked
Coalition.
that question.
This,
Jim, turn
was
off
sent
the mic.
from-
You're out of order. Be seated.
I need to hear specifically why.
Sit.
I find it appalling that other members on this Board of Commissioners would allow that to occur. I think when a question is asked specifically about an email and a commissioner has indicated that he has not read an email about...
Was it sent to all the commissioners? I didn't get it. So, you know,
Okay, well, now that's
we don't want,
two commissioners.
yeah, but we don't want the email. We don't get the email, so we don't need it. We don't want it.
Bill,
Okay,
don't say
well,
it.
now there's two
Dan,
commissioners.
I
please
don't
sit
want it.
down or I'll have you removed.
Commissioner Curley, I will see you afterwards and give you the full text.
Mr. Curley is your commissioner. That makes a lot of sense to me. You should be starting with him. Thank you. Yep, absolutely.
Chip Layfield, Wayne, along that same vein, I think the problem with the original committee that started, who knows where, then kind of morphed into this other committee, is that a document was produced, a very specific document with an agenda, frankly. And I guess my concern is that as we revoke this committee tonight, rescind this committee, that document is thrown in the ash heap of history, and that the Planning Commission can start over afresh and anew in public meetings, not in people's dining rooms. Is that?
Yeah.
We referred the matter to
That's the
planning.
impact that I would see from this.
Right.
That document that was presented at the meeting that I was at, that is no longer to be
It's not
considered.
our document.
It's
They
not our
can-
document.
They can bring it to the planning
Yes.
commission if they want or not. We have nothing to do with that
And the
document.
route would have been, had that continued, was they would have gone to planning and there would have been public hearings before it ever came to us.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with that, but we're seeing the same thing with Commissioner Schaefer's committee, that these committees meet in secret. They have their own agenda. That agenda then becomes the anchor, and the citizens have to push back against an anchor that's fully established throughout these different
Yeah.
committees.
Well,
because they
thank
met
you.
in
Thank you
secret
for your
behind
that
closed doors.
observation.
My opinion is that we can't do anything more to make that anchor go away than what we're doing right now.
Okay.
I think we're taking the fullest action possible
I was just
to
asking for that
meet the
clarification.
spirit of what you want done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any further? Oh, come on, Christina, join the parade.
I want to publicly thank Commissioner Mahoney, who is my commissioner, and there was a real public outcry from our neighborhood and for the other commissioners who supported as well, Mr. Higgins, Mr. Curley, I think Mr. Fisher as well, who supported just stopping this process and rescinding this. So I thank you very much, and the fact that we're now hearing that that document that was formed in private will be thrown in the trash gives me great hope for the future of starting on an even playing field. So we, speaking for neighbors, really appreciate that. So thank you very much.
All in favor of approving Resolution 2010-51?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Is that it? Finance and Audit, Kevin?
The first item on the agenda is the schedule of bills payable identified as 10-9B. calling for a grand total of authorized disbursements in the amount of $1,238,857.25, and they are all verified and processed by the Finance Department and are within the 2010 budget. So I will move that this be approved, but I do have one question.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Board discussion.
Bill, on page 10, the CW Cook, is that a pass-through of the grant money?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's all part of the grant, right?
yes. Yep.
Any further?
One question, on page 5, the $68,000 plus or minus to the library, is that the normal, the amount that just our contribution at that particular time of the amount that we give them per year, or is that a separate amount, separate issue?
No, that's the normal contribution that's been budgeted.
And paid monthly.
Very good.
Any further board comment? Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Go ahead.
The next item on the agenda is Resolution 2010-48. Bob or Bill, you want to discuss this? And Bill, you and I had a discussion about the last element of it, and I'd like to hear your viewpoint on that.
Sure. This piece of legislation tonight is in accordance with the provisions of Act 205, which requires the municipality to submit, or the board of the municipality to approve the subsequent year's MMO for pension obligations on or before September 30th of each year. That's why this legislation is in front of you tonight. The MMO calculates based on the township's payroll for the police and the civilian pension plans, and builds in the actuarial assumptions that are made to come up with a minimum obligation that fits within the act to adequately fund the township's 2 pension plans. So that's the calculation that's attached to the legislation. Specific to the question with regard to...
Let me just, I guess,
Oh,
before...
sure.
I asked just, I was concerned about, at the end of the paragraph where it says, "now therefore," and it says, "and includes this cost as part of the budget for the 2011 year," because as they explain on the explanation, we have the option of not doing that, funding 75% of it through the budget. Now, there's a trade-off, obviously, associated with that, but I wanted to know whether or not, by including "and includes this cost as part of the budget for the 2011 year," we're committing to include that amount in the 2011 budget, or do we have the option, as the budget becomes clearer, whether or not we can revert to the 75% level? And I asked Bill if he could try to get clarification on that.
Sure, and the clarification is the information I have says revisions to the MMO can be made up to the time the 2011 budget receives final approval. So I would say the answer to that question is yes.
And John Rice, do you agree with that interpretation? Or are you being put on the spot without having the ability to?
I haven't looked at it, but I believe sitting through I haven't looked at it, but sitting through many MMO presentations, I know they've been changed up until final budget approval. You've got to reflect, this is an estimate, and the
I
requirement...
understand, and if he had ended with the, for the civilian plan, I would have felt 100% comfortable.
But it's still an estimate, Kevin. The obligation under that act is that you reflect your estimate in the minutes of your meeting. So you're not approving it under the act. It's an estimate that you have to reflect in the minutes of your meeting. And I've seen them changed up until the budgets are finally adopted. You worried about being locked into the number?
No, I'm worried partially about being locked into the number, more importantly, being locked into the commitment to fund it at 100% of that number next year.
And I think what Bill said is true. I mean, I can confirm that if he's looked at the act, which he's saying he has. I believe he's correct.
Well, by passing this, aren't we in fact accepting Bill's recommendation to go with 100% funding?
No, it says we
That-
recognize
That was
the
exactly
obligation.
my
Yeah.
concern.
Yeah, I mean, is that what,
Because we haven't seen the budget. So
That-
that's exactly why I was concerned about
You're
potentially being
accepting
wrong.
it tonight, but you can revise it later on, once you get into the budgetary process. You have to show it in the minutes of your meeting before the end of this month. That's
I
all you
understand,
have
but,
to do.
but by virtue of the fact that it says, and includes this cost as part of the budget for the 2011 year, when we see the budget, I have the ability to revert to the 75% alternative. Bob's nodding his head.
Yes, yes.
Did we take the Act 44 reduction last year?
Yes.
Yes.
We did. Yeah, I voted against that. I'm glad to see if the board supports this, because this obligation isn't going away. So whatever we underfund this year becomes something we need to fund in the future. And we took advantage of this last year, and I think the year before even, possibly. But I think a lot of the issues we have with long-term liabilities are here because prior boards, 10, 15, 20 years ago, kept kind of passing the buck. And I'm not going to be comfortable underfunding this year. So I'm in full support of this resolution as it's written.
Well, the issue is, one of the reasons we're underfunded is because the stock market the last couple of years has hurt our pension fund, right?
That's one of the major contributing factors.
And if
So
the
there's-
stock market went up a lot next year, that would be less money we'd have to put in the future, right?
Well, in the past, the township elected to use an assumed interest rate or growth rate of 8%. So that's kind of our baseline. Any growth above 8% will help us. Any growth less than 8% or even shrinkage in the assets will go the other way.
So it's not going above 8%. Okay.
Well, yeah, if it goes above 8%, then that will help our plans. But if it's below 8%, then
Yeah, all right.
not so much. Unless we change the 8%, which that will be conversations we'll
Okay.
have
All right.
on an ongoing basis.
Oh, yeah. Good. Let's move to second. Let's go.
moved and seconded? Any more discussion? Any public discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Next item on the agenda is a motion to approve a business tax settlement identified as 2010-BT-03. Bob or Bill, one of you guys want to quickly walk us through this?
Yeah. As discussed in executive session, this is just the motion to approve the settlement for $62,000.
I'll move the approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I just want to comment, and please stop. We cannot name the taxpayer, but we can.
John, I would
Yeah.
advise you to let
No,
Bill
I know.
and John Rice make any comments.
I don't even know the taxpayer, so
I
that's
think
good.
John's going to just, for the general public, that
Just
because
name
of
the
the
figures.
Taxpayers Act, there's no identifying information that can be
Right.
put forth or requested. And we started a policy of, the board adopted a policy of approving these settlement agreements at public meetings 2 or 3 months ago. I think this is the third or fourth one we've done. But other than the approval and the number that's being approved, you have memos in front of you that describe it. That's what you're voting on.
And that this settlement is in excess of the actual tax due. So this is a good thing for the township.
Call the question.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any public discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The last item on the agenda is an update on our bond refinancing efforts. Bill, Bob, which one of you guys are going to take this?
I think I'll take it. And I'll try to be brief in the interest of time. But just to bring the board up to date on where we are with this, at the last Board of Commissioners meeting, you guys approved legislation adopting Cozen O'Connor as our bond counsel. That was the last major piece of the team that's necessary to put a refinancing together. And as was pointed out at the last meeting, and it's worth mentioning again, the purpose for replacing bond counsel was because the prior gentleman who assisted the township had retired, so that's what generated the need there. I've been in discussions with the the financial advisor for the township in putting together numbers. At this point, we are working on several different options with regard to how the savings can be spread out. The township does have options there. So what we'll be doing is putting those options together, and we'll need at the first meeting in October a decision on how we'd like to proceed. For example, we could take 100% of the savings in the first year. We could spread them out over multiple years. We could spread them out over the life of the bonds, or anywhere in between. So we're finalizing those numbers now. Mr. Walker actually forwarded me those numbers this afternoon, and based on where the market's at versus where those bonds are priced at, we're still in a very good position to save quite a bit of money on refunding it. So that's really the next step. Administratively, we're working on updating the information that's included in the township's official statement for submission to the rating agency, and that in early October then we'll proceed with getting a Moody's rating update. That'll be based on the information we present in the official statement, which is mostly regulated, and they have very specific things they want to see and we'll provide. So we're working with Gordon and with Cozen O'Connell on getting all that information together. In addition to deciding how to treat the savings over a period of time, there will also be legislation forthcoming on actually moving forward with the refunding. So that'll be the next piece legislatively that'll be in front of this group here for decision. So in real brief summary, the numbers are still very attractive, in excess of the $1 million mark at the rates as they were today. Obviously, that's subject to change based on market conditions from now until we actually close, which will probably be late November. But can't imagine they'll change that dramatically upward between now and November. So we're in a good position right now, and we're moving forward with the project.
So, Bill, again, similar to my last set of questions, when you propose the savings, will be sort of at the early stages of our budget evaluation. Are we locked into decisions we make at that point in time, or will we have flexibility to alter it as the budget sort of comes to final fruition?
Well, when it comes to the savings with the refunding, once the decision's made, we will be locked in because the bonds will be priced and sold based on those assumptions.
So will we have a preliminary first look at the budget before we have to make those decisions?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there anyone on the board that would like to share with Bill some ideas that they have about how we should take this savings, or do we want to all wait and just see the recommendations? Well, it seems like it's appropriate for us to give some general guidance to staff. All at once, spread
I would
it.
leave it to Bob and Bill to make a recommendation to us. They're immersed.
What we can do is put together several options for the
Right.
board and get those to you with your packets this week. So you have better than a week to look it over and contact me with any questions that you may have while you're reviewing it. And then ultimately at October 11th, make a decision on it.
Great, thanks.
All scenarios, though, the savings start in 2011?
Yes.
Nothing's in 2010?
Well, I would imagine that we could build an option that didn't generate any savings right away, and I'm not sure that'll be one of the ones that we
don't
put
do that
down.
one. I don't think you get any votes for that.
So I don't want to say no. I'm not sure that would be. We would want to start
In 2011.
realizing savings in the first year, I would imagine. So, can we all agree on that? I mean, that'll be. We'll start the assumptions there.
Thanks, Bill. Library.
Or item S.
S, we delete it.
I have some announcements for the library, but first, can I just address one more thing in finance and audit? Was it on the schedule to get a preliminary 2011 at this meeting?
Thank you for reminding me on that one. Yes, and it's about 95% complete.
Okay.
There's a couple capital funding and debt allocation questions that we're still researching, and
Okay.
I hope to have that with your packets this week, so that'll be on
Okay.
Thursday,
Great.
if not sooner.
Okay,
But-
great, thanks.
Mhm. Thank you.
Can I do library? We ready?
Yeah.
There are just two announcements from the library. They are having their paperback book sale on this weekend, Saturday from 10 to 5 and Sunday from 1 to 3. And all paperbacks are 50 cents and 3 for $1. Also, they were very happy to announce that they received a $10,000 grant from the State Department of Community Affairs to upgrade the projection and sound equipment in the Windsor Room. That's it for the library.
Thank you. Parks and Rec, just a couple quick announcements. The 8th annual Sarah McCarran cleanup will take place in Skunk Hollow on Sunday, October 17th from 1 to 4 p.m. And the 33rd annual Penn Medicine Radnor Run is scheduled for Sunday, October 31st, starting at the Township Building. Pre-registration and sponsorship reception will be held on Friday, October 29th, 5:30 to 7:30, or to 7. That's it for Parks and Rec. Public Works. Public Health.
There's nothing on the agenda. The Public Health, the Board of Health Committee is working on Section 115 amendments, and we'll probably see those sometime next month or the month after. No further report.
Thanks.
Public Works, we have a resolution to purchase 2 leaf collection buckets. The low bidder is Plaster Equipment Company at $29,974, and I'll move the approval.
Second. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comment? Come over to this.
Any board comment?
Any board comment?
Public comment?
All in
All-
favor?
Aye.
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 That's it under
Any
Public Works.
opposed? Old business. New business.
I would just like to ask the board to allow public participation to wrap up the evening. It is not on the agenda as part of the end of the meeting, but I think it's good to allow that one last word.
Opinions from the board on that?
Public comment.
I got no issue. It sounds good.
Okay. Is that it for new business?
Yep.
Public comment.
Dan Sherry, Wayne. I have to admit I was a little surprised to see public participation not where it is traditionally held, which is one of the last items on agendas, at least for every Board of Commissioner meeting I've attended. And I thank Commissioner Fisher for bringing that up during new business. Otherwise, I suspect that we would be adjourned without the ability for the public to comment. I don't know if that's the start of a new board policy. I sincerely hope not.
Just to be clear, we had a comment at the beginning of the meeting that Diane Edbrell was in favor of it because it allows people not to have to sit here till 11 o'clock at night to make their comments. So different people have different perspectives.
I certainly appreciate that, Commissioner Higgins. I'm not here as Diane Edbrell's spokesperson one way or the other. Ms. Edbrell, if she likes, may very well want to make those comments at the beginning of the meeting. Other individuals like to hear everything that's discussed, and other individuals who may have their comments cut off, gavelled down, or their microphones cut off may like to use public participation at the end of the meetings to make their point more fully. And so I don't know whether or not this is a change in policy for this board. I don't know whether I'll get an answer to that if I even pose that question. But one thing I will say is that the idea of moving around public comment or limiting public comment was an issue that was actually put forward in a proposed resolution 7 or 8 months ago, authored by ostensibly Commissioner Nagel. That resolution actually never came to the floor for debate. It was pulled back. It was inferred to the press that it was a draft document, and not being here for the first hour of the meeting, I was curious as to whether or not there has been a shift and whether in the future public comment, at least in a general sense, will just be at the inception of board meetings. Has there been a decision about that?
No, it's a good idea to have public comment in the beginning. If somebody wants a public comment at the end, it's fine with me, so go on.
I'm delighted to hear that, Commissioner Spengler. But before I continue, Commissioner Fisher was reaching for his microphone.
Well, the board hasn't discussed the topic, but certainly two of us are in favor, and it sounds like three or four, so I don't think it's going to be an issue. We can deliberate that. We could put that on the agenda of the next meeting.
Yeah, I'm in favor of having it at the end too. I mean,
Okay,
I like
so
having
there
a
you
beginning so people like Diane that just
Yeah,
want
have
to
it
come and
twice.
speak, they can leave.
At the end.
Yeah,
What's
we'll
that?
have it twice.
Yeah,
it's
I don't have a
not
problem.
Yeah, we'll have it
one way or
twice.
another.
I'm
There's some benefit to having it at the beginning
Yeah.
too.
I'm delighted to hear that. I'm delighted. The last point I just wanted to make rather generally, and it's become an issue, and I won't read from that email verbatim. It's been posted online, as Commissioner Nagel alluded to. I'll forward it to any member of the commissioners that shows an interest, those who are apparently not aware. But it leads to a broader discussion about openness and transparency. In that email, discussions about committee meetings are expressly referenced, and they're expressly referenced within the confines of people's dining rooms. We are currently in a state-of-the-art conference room. It has video recording equipment that this township paid good money for. I would hope that this board adopts a philosophy that when committees do meet, they meet in videotaped meetings. Videotaped meetings are important for members of the public who cannot make it to the meetings. They're regularly uploaded on YouTube, and it allows all of your constituents to be better informed, and I don't think anybody would disagree that that's a good thing. It allowed me, for example, to witness Commissioner Curley's subgroup and the goings-on at that committee. It allowed me to view the contents of the Open Space Committee, although I must confess, when I first looked at the meeting, I thought I was watching a meeting of the Radnor Conservancy's Board of Directors. They appear to be almost all of the same people. That's important. It also came to my attention that approximately 2 Fridays ago, there were organizations and goals discussed in a Friday morning through afternoon meeting, which was not televised. There may be reasons that were given for that, but I would hope that this board undertakes a philosophy of utilizing this building to its fullest extent. And I must say, while I'm delighted to hear that there will now be a new board policy of board comment at the beginning and at the end, I do hope that is expanded to cover committees. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Move we adjourn.
Moved and seconded?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?